Chapter 2488. Another round of fierce battle started again. Chu Yang repeatedly used the 30 moves of the Tribulation Sword technique more than 10 times, launching an all-encompassing attack on Yu Lai. Every time he used the sword technique, he actually had some new insights. Yu Kai also clearly felt that the power of Chu Yang's sword moves was slowly increasing. Although the increase was not very obvious, but the power of the sword moves now was almost like two different people compared to the sword moves at the beginning. Is this bastard using me to practice his sword technique? This unimaginable thought appeared in Yu Jiari's mind. But the more he thought about it, the angrier he got. Thinking of this, Yu Lai became unusually angry. Thinking of me, the deputy commander of the Mo Yun Heaven Army, how can I be a puppet that you can use to practice your sword technique? Yu Lai let out a long roar. The sword light suddenly flourished, and actually counterattacked with an unprecedented power. At this moment, Chu Yang suddenly somersaulted out and shouted, "Who's there?" Yu Lai was startled. Is there someone else nearby? Why didn't I notice? Instead, it was Chu Yang who noticed. He saw Chu Yang scolding angrily. Yu Lai, I respect you as a senior, a commander of the Mo Yun Heaven Army, so I agreed to fight with you one-on-one, a fair battle. I didn't expect you to arrange for your subordinates to ambush me. Late Rain, can you still be considered as a senior expert with your actions? Are you still a deputy commander of the Mo Yun Heaven Army? Is this how you eat your words and go back on them? Yu Lai said angrily, nonsense. When did I arrange for my subordinates to ambush you here? Chu Yang's face was full of anger. You still dare to not admit it? A man dares to admit what he does, and has a clear conscience. I didn't expect you to be so cowardly. You dare to do it but fear to admit it. What you did is done, and you still want to deny it and quibble. Do you think everyone in the world is stupid and blind? His face was full of disdain. Yu Lai was so angry that smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. Nonsense. There's obviously no one here. Where did the ambush come from? Ha ha ha. Chu Yang sneered mockingly. Shameless person, are you still trying to cover up the truth? Do you still want me to take out evidence? Do you want to prove that you are despicable? Good, good, good. Yu Kai was a proud and arrogant person. How could she accept such an insult? He shouted, as long as you can show me the evidence, I will kowtow to you and admit my mistake. As he spoke, he circulated his divine sense to search the void carefully. Chu Yang took 8 steps forward. Then, he raised his head and shouted, Heavenly King Mo Yun, you bastard. Hurry up and get your ass out here. You're just a bunch of rats and dogs. You dare to plot against me, but you don't dare to come out and meet me. Yu Kai only sneered at Chu Yang. Chu Yang said furiously, do you think that I won't be able to find you just because you know how to conceal your divine soul? Yu Jiari was startled. Divine soul concealment. Could there really be someone spying on them from the sidelines? Who was it? He had the ability to conceal the traces of his soul. This was no ordinary person. Could it be that there was really someone who would sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight, intending to be the fisherman and reap the benefits? He couldn't help but concentrate a little more, increasing the strength of his divine sense search. Chu Yang was unable to restrain his anger, and he took another 50 feet forward. Suddenly, he shouted, are you still not coming out? Chu Yang's wrist suddenly shook. The calamity sword in his hand flew out. Mixed with the unparalleled power of wind and thunder, it shot toward somewhere in the sky. The sword light was dazzling, and it shot straight into the sky. Seeing this, Yu Kai couldn't help but look up, wanting to see what was going on. However, at this moment, Chu Yang, who had just thrown the long sword into the air, suddenly flashed in the moment the long sword left his hand. Yu Kai had just raised his head when he felt a sudden darkness in front of him. He knew that something was wrong. But at this moment, it was already too late for him to do anything. Then, he felt a huge fist smashing violently on his nose. This was really unexpected and impossible to guard against. Yu Kai was now fully focused on searching for that inexplicable ambusher in the sky. And Chu Yang had been showing his sword skills all along. Now that the long sword had already left his hand, it was clear that he was already extremely angry. The only thing he was thinking of was that ambusher. Therefore, Yu Kai was 10,000% unprepared. This punch landed solidly on Late Rain's nose without any fuss. Yu Kai's face was suddenly hit with a white light ripple. That was the protection of the sage's golden body. His whole body flew up from the ground, and he was sent flying backward by this punch. He only felt a sharp pain on his face. Late Rain knew that he had been tricked. He was furious in his heart. Chu Yang had already caught up with him like a shadow. He punched Late Rain's eyes again. Then, Chu Yang went all out. His two fists brought along countless afterimages. It was as if a torrential rain was pouring down on Late Rain's face. Yu Kai's body suddenly left the ground. He had just recovered his spirit when he was hit hard. For a moment, he couldn't react in time at all. He could only fly backward passively. White light flickered on his face, and circles of ripples were smashed out by Chu Yang. Chu Yang carried a huge momentum, and each punch was full of strength. Like a storm, it landed heavily on Yu Kai's face. On the nose. He didn't hit any other places, but only hit the eyes and nose. Yu Kai's body flew out of the mountain like a kite with a broken string. Chu Yang in front of him followed up fiercely. His fists were like meteors, and his hands were like torrential rain. While fighting, Chu Yang shouted, "Yu Kai, you despicable and insidious villain. Yu Kai, you dare to plot against me. Yu Kai, you dare to sneak attack. Yu Kai, you've really disgraced Mo Yuntian. Yu Kai, you son of a bitch. Yu Kai, how can you be so despicable and shameless to this extent? Yu Kai, I really feel cold for you. Yu Kai, you despicable villain who deserves to be hacked to death. You actually used tricks in a fair duel and ambushed me. Yu Kai, I've seen your so-called ability. It turns out that you're such a despicable and filthy villain." Yu Kai only felt that his heart was about to explode. Who was despicable and shameless? Who was the one who sneaked attack? Who was the one who schemed? Who was it? Who was it? Who was it? Those shady deeds were clearly done by you, Chu Yang. It was you. It was you. It was you who used tricks to sneak attack me. It was you who, after the sneak attack succeeded, actually shamelessly played the blame game. You put all the shit on my head, and now you can actually say it so righteously. What's even more outrageous is that you actually said it so aggrieved and indignant. How can you be so shameless? You're simply despicable and shameless. There's no bottom line at all. But these words were all in Yu Kai's heart. He simply didn't have any chance to say it out. Just after his entire body was smashed to flying backward, his feet never landed on the ground. He only needed to land on the ground to be able to catch his breath. Even if he had to take a few hits, he had to get out of this embarrassing situation first. But in this short period of time, Chu Yang actually punched out a total of 310 punches. There wasn't the slightest bit of gap at all. Chu Yang's punches carried a wild and violent force. He didn't seek to injure the enemy. He only wanted to charge forward. Even if Yu Kai used the 10,000-pound hammer, he still couldn't step on the ground. He could only fly backward sullenly all the way. He didn't even dare to open his mouth to forcefully convert his internal energy. Because, once he opened his mouth, his teeth would definitely be knocked out. In the current situation, he was completely relying on the strong defense of the saint's golden body to resist Chu Yang's attacks. Once he forcefully opened his mouth, the operation of the saint's golden body would be temporarily interrupted. Although he wouldn't suffer any serious injuries in other places, his teeth would definitely be knocked out. However, the teeth would definitely be shattered. That was the place where the golden bodies of a few saints could not fully protect. Yu Kai's current situation was in line with an old saying, "Eat gold thread in silence." There was bitterness that couldn't be spoken. Eating wontons in silence, he knew what he was doing. He was so sullen that he wanted to go crazy. But he could only endure the beating all the way. In the original open space, the injuries of both sides had been fully bandaged. Everyone was glaring at each other fiercely. If it wasn't for the strict orders of both sides not to fight, they would have already killed each other. If looks could kill, it was believed that everyone on both sides would have died at least 1,000 times by now. All that was left was worry for the two sides that were fighting right now. On the mountain in the distance, vast sword energy shot into the sky and danced in the air like gods and demons were fighting. Such an intense battle was too much for everyone to take in. Even Mo Yuntian and the others who had been full of confidence in Yu Kai couldn't help but feel nervous and uncertain. They were very familiar with martial Yu's fighting style. They could see that the sword light that seemed to want to cut through the world was definitely not martial Yu's sword. Since it wasn't, then it had to be Chu Yang's. If they inferred based on this, then they could come to a shocking, inconceivable, and unbelievable conclusion. Ever since the battle started, Marshal Yu had been passively taking the beating. He had been at a disadvantage the entire time. He was definitely at a disadvantage. When they thought about this, everyone frowned deeply. There was great worry on their faces. That Chu Yang's strength had reached such a terrifying level. Just as they were thinking about this, the sword light in the sky suddenly disappeared. It seemed that the battle over there had stopped. Everyone, regardless of friend or foe, stood up in unison. Everyone's heart was beating rapidly. Who was the winner of this battle? Suddenly, a loud boom sounded. Then they heard Chu Yang's furious curses. "Yu Kai, you despicable and shameless person." The voice was clear and powerful, penetrating and shaking the sky. Everyone was shocked. What was it? Why was Chu Yang so angry? Then Chu Yang's curses sounded. "You ambushed me. You ambushed me. You ambushed me. You couldn't beat me, so you used such a lowly method. What kind of hero are you? You really make people laugh." Everyone came to a sudden realization. As expected, this was the truth. The second chapter is still missing one. I will finish it tomorrow. Chapter 2489. He's gone, he's gone. We're all safe now. Everyone was sobbing. Together with the 800 soldiers of the Dream Slayer army, they all knelt on the ground. For a group of people who were once their enemies, this man who risked his life to save them. Everyone knelt on the ground piously, tears streaming down their faces. Are they gone? Are they all gone? Chu Yang asked in a daze. His face revealed a look of relief. Then, his eyes, which were originally in a daze, suddenly shone with an indescribable pride. I won the battle with Yu Kai, who was at the peak of the saint level. He, Chu Yang sneered and said intermittently, "We're all men. We only have one life. You dared to risk your life. Do you think I don't? Ha ha." He laughed hoarsely. Suddenly, his whole body fell backward. He fell into the arms of Chu Le, whose face was already full of tears. His ribs are all broken. His sternum is broken, his skull is also broken, his neck is broken, his spine is broken, his broken bones have already turned into thousands of pieces. Everyone checked Chu Yang's injuries and was speechless. No one could imagine how Chu Yang had managed to fight with such a tragic injury. Even if an ordinary person had 1% of Chu Yang's injuries, they would not be able to get up. But not only could Chu Yang fight, he could also persevere all the way until the other party admitted defeat. Only then did he collapse. What kind of tenacity was this? What kind of shocking willpower was this? Looking at Chu Yang, who had fallen into a coma, everyone was speechless for a while. What an iron-boned hero. But now, they needed to face the problem. Chu Yang's injuries were too serious. It was so serious that no one dared to move his body. They were afraid that he would fall apart if they moved him. This worry was not excessive, nor was it an exaggeration. A certain king of hell had lost more than 40% of his bones. If they were not careful, he would no longer be in human form. But now, there was no medicine that could save him. Seeing that Chu Yang's breathing was getting weaker and weaker while he was unconscious, everyone was helpless. "I have some medicine here. I just don't know if it'll work," Yarrow Ningning said. "What kind of medicine?" Tan Tan was overjoyed. "Cut the crap, take it out quickly," Chu Le urged her sternly. The little lass was already out of her wits, and she had to grab onto any straw that could save her life. Yarrow Ningning, on the other hand, was not offended at all. He said, "This medicine was given to me by my mother. She said that it could save my life at a critical moment. I just don't know if it's useful for such a serious injury. Since it's already like this, using it should be better than not using it. Then, he took out a purple jade bottle from his bosom. He carefully opened it, and brought it close to Chu Yang's mouth. Just like that, a trace of silvery liquid dripped out of the bottle. As soon as it left the bottle, the liquid immediately emitted a dazzling light that resembled a bright star. Between heaven and earth. Suddenly, it was filled with endless fragrant spiritual energy. It automatically entered his mouth as if it had a life of its own. Then, without any warning, the brightest colors of the stars suddenly appeared on Chu Yang's body. It was as if all the stars in the sky had gathered on Chu Yang's body at this moment, and were emitting endless light. It's the constellation soul-capturing liquid. Uncle Hu exclaimed. He turned to look at Yarrow Ningning, as if he could not believe the scene before his eyes. Yarrow Ningning rolled his eyes and said, "What's the big deal about this? Is it worth making a fuss over?" Uncle Hu and Uncle Ma both stomped their feet and sighed. "What's the big deal about this? Is it worth making a fuss over? What's the big deal about this? Is it worth making a fuss over?" This was a real, true, and deranged prodigal. If the two uncles knew that this was something that someone had given out, the two of them would definitely stop it. Even if they had to fall out with Tan Tan and the others, they would still stop it. It was not that the two uncles were too stingy, but it was really because this thing was really too precious, too rare, too. Without a doubt, the constellation soul-capturing liquid was a peerless treasure in the world. As long as one took this constellation soul-capturing liquid, no matter how serious their injuries were, they would still be able to hang on to their last breath and not die. They would be able to wait indefinitely for the medicine that the injured needed. This medicinal effect was not only applicable to ordinary people. Even if the descendants of Emperor Yi suffered injuries that were absolutely impossible to heal, they could also use the constellation soul-capturing liquid to maintain their vitality. Therefore, although the constellation soul-capturing liquid could not have an immediate effect, it was definitely a first-rate life-saving medicine in the Heaven Imperial Court. Once this medicine was taken, as long as there was no external interference, even if the injured wanted to die, they would not die. Back then, the Demon Empress had worked hard and even braved the huge risk of almost starting a war with the other Sky Emperors to get this bottle. This guy actually gave it away without batting an eyelid. If this matter was known by the Demon Empress, she would definitely immediately beat this unfilial person until his buttocks blossomed. After taking the constellation soul-capturing liquid, the effect was indeed amazing. Chu Yang's complexion instantly became much better. Moreover, the essence energy in his body also began to circulate on its own. Although he was still in a state of unconsciousness, the essence energy in his body had already begun to heal his injuries on its own. This was undoubtedly an extremely, extremely good sign. In Chu Yang's dantian that no one could see, those little golden people were all dispirited at this moment, almost on the verge of collapse. However, as the constellation soul-capturing liquid quietly entered their bodies, those little people suddenly became like people who had been starving for 30,000 years and suddenly saw nectar. Without any explanation, they all began to madly absorb it. As they absorbed, the power of that supreme true spirit in Chu Yang's body also began to gather again, gathering towards his dantian once again. Slowly. That previously completely dried up dantian slowly appeared that kind of golden liquid from before, and the spirits of the few little people also gradually became uplifted again. Following wave after wave of breathing, traces of golden mist once again came out from the mouth and nose, flowing through the meridians to all parts of Chu Yang's body. And wherever this golden air flow passed, the originally severely damaged meridians began to recover bit by bit. Even those broken and crushed bones were glued together by an inexplicable mucus, returning to their original positions. Although this process of recovery was slow, it was disorderly and layered. Although Chu Yang was still unconscious at this moment, his complexion was getting better and better. However, his complexion was getting better and better. After a day of not moving, a rare trace of blood appeared on his face that was as pale as paper. Until now. Only then did Chu Le and Tan Tan feel slightly relieved. During this period of time, the two had been guarding by Chu Yang's side, not going anywhere. They did not even blink their eyes as they took care of him. Tan Tan seemed to have drained himself of all his energy. He continuously channeled his own energy into Chu Yang's body. After his own cultivation was exhausted, Chu Lere took over, and Tan Tan took over after resting for a while. Meng Wu Ya's injuries were also very serious, and he was also in a state of unconsciousness. However, his life was not in danger. The Dream Slayer army had nowhere to go, and could only temporarily march with Chu Yang and the others. Not to mention anything else, Chu Yang, their savior, was still unconscious. No matter how thick-skinned the Dream Slayer army was, they would not be able to leave without a word. The army started with more than 30 people from Chu Yang and the others. In the blink of an eye, it became close to 1,000 people, marching majestically. However, the army's marching speed was as slow as a snail. It was not until the afternoon of the second day that they traveled less than 100 miles. They set up camp at the foot of a mountain, and prepared to rest. Yu Kai's injuries were about the same as Chu Yang's, and he was definitely unable to pursue. Even if he did not consider Yu Kai's character, just based on his injuries, everyone was still safe. Even if Yu Kai had the elixirs that Yuan Tianji gave him, it was impossible for it to reach the level of the constellation soul-stealing liquid. Hence, his condition was definitely not better than Chu Yang's. Without Yu Kai's presence, they had to worry about the attacks of the tribulation spirits, and it was impossible for them to counterattack. Although Yu Kai's character is not good, his words and promises can still be counted as worth of gold, an officer of the Dream Slayer army said. An officer of the Dream Slayer army said, since he promised to retreat, under normal circumstances, he would not go back on his word. After setting up the camp, they first helped Chu Yang and Meng Wu Ya to settle down. Then, everyone began to look around for food. If there was nothing to do, they would set up a big defensive formation on the periphery. Then, everyone would sit down to practice martial arts to restore their condition. After Yarrow Ningning checked on Chu Yang's injuries, he returned to his own tent. In the tent, there was another person besides the two elders. He was full of Qinghua aura, and was standing solemnly, waiting for someone's return. When he saw Yarrow Ningning enter, he immediately stood up. Greetings. No need for formalities. Yarrow Ningning waved her hand and sat lazily on the chair. Actually, I didn't ask you to come here for anything important. I just want to ask you about the real situation of the fight between my brother Chu and Yu Lai. After all, you are the Heavenly Patrol and judge the outcome. As the other party involved, you must have seen the entire process. This person was the head of the Demon Emperor's Heavenly Oath Division. After all, Yu Kai had made a bet with someone of Chu Yang's level. Although it was not something that ordinary people could witness, the head of the Oath Division was destined to be the only exception. The four of them did not deliberately lower their volume when they spoke. Therefore, everyone could hear what they were saying even though they were speaking in Yarrow Tai and Yarrow Ningning's tent. At this moment, when they heard Yarrow Ningning's words, everyone's ears suddenly perked up. This topic was too interesting for everyone. Finished. Sigh, I have to attend the annual meeting on the 13th again. These few days, I've been saving like crazy. But I'm afraid that I'll still owe it by then. Let me give my brothers and sisters a heads up in advance. If I really owe it, don't scold me. If I don't owe it, then reward me. Chapter 2490. Chu Yang touched his chin and was suddenly filled with interest. Under such circumstances, there was still no change. If there was nothing strange about it, how could it be justified? With a splash, the four of them jumped into the lake at the same time. Other than the plop at the beginning, which was considered normal, the changes after that were a little strange. The lake water seemed to have automatically parted to two sides, and the four of them went straight to the bottom of the lake, cutting through the waves. The temperature of the lake water was very warm, and it actually felt very pleasant. At the bottom of the lake, a string of bubbles rushed out neatly. However, the current situation was basically the same as when Chu Yang came down that year. There was nothing strange. Of course, this was only for Chu Yang. The other three women were very surprised by this lake. The Lake of Despair, as its name suggested, still had nothing. There were no aquatic plants, not even fishes, turtles, shrimps, or crabs. There was no sign of life. Clean, pure, and transparent water. This is the legendary Lake of Despair. Wu Qianqian, Tai Butian, and Mo Qingwu were all here for the first time. They couldn't help but feel a little strange about the situation of the lake water. This is the Lake of Despair that is said to be the place of the final battle. The Lake of Despair where thousands of corpses rush into. This doesn't look like it. According to the rumors, this lake was the place where countless corpses returned to. Because of this, the three women were very reluctant to go into the lake at first. It wasn't until they came here and carefully observed the lake water that they decided to follow Chu Yang into the lake. Chu Yang also touched his head. It doesn't look like it, but it is indeed like it. Unlike the three women, Chu Yang had personally witnessed the scene of many corpses being buried in the Lake of Despair. It was still vivid in his mind, and his memory was still fresh. It was just that he didn't dare to say it out loud this time. Although the three women killed people without hesitation, the place they were in now was actually a different kind of place where corpses returned to. It was very likely that they would directly go berserk. Tai Butian pondered and said, looking at the surrounding situation, the shape of the lake, and the things at the bottom of the lake, it seems like a place specially used for bathing. The water quality is excellent. How can it be a place where corpses are stored? Chu Yang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Women's thoughts were really unconstrained and hard to follow. However, Tai Bu Tian's words weren't wrong. Just by looking at the bottom of this lake, it really looked like a big bathhouse that was constantly heating up. The temperature was quite comfortable. Even with the cultivation bases of the four of them, they were able to travel at a leisurely pace. It was as if they were on land, and they weren't affected by the environment in the slightest. In the blink of an eye, they arrived at the place where Chu Yang had been last time. This place was something like a door at the bottom of the lake. Although a long period of time had passed, Chu Yang still felt his heart tremble the moment he arrived here. Although what he experienced last time was just an illusion, he really didn't want to experience that kind of illusion again. Unlike Chu Yang, who had stayed in front of the door, this was the first time the three women had come to the Lake of Despair. They were very curious, so they split up to search for anything special about the lake. Before long, the three women had already searched the entire bottom of the Lake of Despair. However, he didn't find anything out of the ordinary. The only thing that was a little special was the blowhole at the bottom of the lake, which was constantly bubbling. Other than that, there was really nothing else. This is strange. Chu Yang scratched his head. The three women's cultivation bases were extraordinary, and their eyesight was also outstanding. Since they didn't find anything, he believed that he wouldn't be able to find anything even if he personally looked for it. However, here came the problem. What kind of status did Chen Feng and Liu Yun have? There was no reason for them to lie to him. At this moment, the four of them felt the water ripple with extraordinary strength. A special whirlpool of the lake water gradually formed at the bottom of the lake. Slowly, the entire lake water seemed to be spinning along with it. Chu Yang and the other three circulated their cultivation and forcefully stabilized their bodies. They didn't go with the flow, and carefully observed the whirlpool that suddenly appeared. They were already prepared to fight at any time. The whirlpool suddenly spun at a high speed, and the water in all directions was expelled. Because of the whirlpool's high speed, a large piece of flat land appeared at the center of the lake. This flat land that appeared out of nowhere didn't have a single drop of water. Then, a further change occurred at that place. A white jade door slowly rose from the ground. Unexpectedly, light shone in all directions, dazzling everyone's eyes. In the holy white light lingering, a huge white jade door, together with its base, quietly rose. The next moment, the two white jade doors that were originally closed opened by themselves. Inside, the faint sound of musical instruments could be heard, and it became clearer and clearer. Melodious music was played, and two bands of musicians were playing their own instruments. They approached from afar, and separated into two columns as they walked out. A clear and melodious voice laughed and said, "Honored guests, please excuse me for not going out to meet you." As he spoke, a person walked out with a smile. This person looked to be in his 40s or 50s. His face was round, and he had an amiable face. He cupped his fists and bowed repeatedly. "I'm the housekeeper here. I heard that honored guests have arrived, so I hurriedly came to greet you. Please forgive me if I've neglected you." Mo Qingwu and Wu Qianqian were almost stunned by the changes in the scene before them. No matter what, they couldn't imagine that there was such an existence under such a lake. In merely 3 days, there was such a special existence. Chu Yang's expression didn't change. He said, "May I ask where this place is? Why would you set up your own door at the bottom of the lake?" That person smiled and said, "This is the outer space of the Hall of Conscience. It belongs to the very few among the millions of spaces in the universe, the life and death reversal space. And the Hall of Conscience is also the place that you wish to go." "Life and death reversal space?" Chu Yang muttered. "Hall of Conscience. What is conscience?" This was the first time he had heard of this name in this life. Life and death reversal space? What a strange name. "What can this space do?" Chu Yang asked. That person bowed and smiled. He said, "Honored guests, you'll know when you come in." Chu Yang nodded. "Okay. Please." That person turned sideways and invited the guests. Chu Yang didn't stand on ceremony. He strode in with Mo Qingwu and the other 2 women. Amidst the peaceful music, the 4 of them walked through the white jade door. In front of them was a glittering road. On both sides of the road, there were verdant plants, full of vitality. This place seemed to be an incomparably vast land space. However, the moment the 4 of them entered, they all sensed something and turned their heads to look. They saw that the white jade door behind them was slowly closing. Soon after, it quietly sank down, just like how it had risen before. The only difference was that the process was the complete opposite. Chu Yang couldn't help but be shocked. When it came to space changes, Chu Yang knew far more than the 3 women. That white jade door, from its appearance to its descent and disappearance, looked simple and pure. But in fact, there was a lot of mystery behind it. It was actually a space passage that connected the heavens and this realm. And it was a space passage that was controlled by someone. It was no small matter. However, there were obviously abnormal changes in space, but the light in this space wasn't affected at all. Chu Yang was shocked, but he didn't show it on his face. He walked forward calmly and said with a smile, "Are the 2 seniors Wu Chenfeng and Chen Liuyun here?" That housekeeper showed a respectful expression and said respectfully, "The 2 sovereigns aren't here now. They have gone to the extraterrestrial battlefield to collect dead souls. I'm afraid they will return later." Chu Yang let out a meaningful sigh of relief. He really did let out a sigh of relief. Since that housekeeper knew Wu Chenfeng and Chen Liuyun and was very respectful to them, it meant that no matter what, the people in this realm wouldn't be enemies with them. At this moment, he felt an inexplicable tremor in his dantian. The calamity sword suddenly trembled. Chu Yang couldn't help but be moved. Before the 2 sovereigns left, they had solemnly instructed that if Lord Sword Master came, we should treat you with care. We have already arranged according to the 2 sovereigns' instructions. As long as Lord Sword Master passes 3 tests, you will be able to see the person you want to see and know what you want to know. The butler smiled apologetically and said cautiously, "Pass 3 tests. What are the specifics of these 3 tests?" Chu Yang frowned. The housekeeper was a little frightened and said slowly, "It's like this. The so-called 3 tests actually have nothing to do with us 2 sovereigns. They are tests that have existed since the beginning of time. Even if we 2 sovereigns want to cancel them, it is impossible. The limits of these tests are extremely high. Even if the 2 sovereigns want to reach the other end from this path, they still need to pass these 3 tests." Chu Yang's heart moved and he said, "Have your 2 sovereigns gone through them before?" The housekeeper looked embarrassed. "No." Chu Yang grinned and smiled bitterly. Mo Qingwu also pursed her lips. Wu Qianqian frowned and Tai Butian was deep in thought. Were these 3 tests so difficult? Even the legendary Chen Feng and Liu Yun couldn't pass them? If even they couldn't pass, could Chu Yang pass? "Do we fight our way through?" Chu Yang asked tentatively. "This? I don't know." The steward smiled bitterly. "I'm just a steward. My cultivation is very low. How could I be qualified to know such a profound thing? I'll send Lord Swordmaster to the checkpoint later. Lord Swordmaster will know the details. Huh. Chuyang suddenly thought of something. How do you know that I am Tribulation Swordmaster? The housekeeper smiled and said, the two sovereigns once said that the other end of the passage can only be opened by one person in the whole world. Only Tribulation Swordmaster. Since ancient times, the world has really thought highly of me. Chuyang took a deep breath and said resolutely, take me there. Yes. The housekeeper led the way while Chuyang and the others followed behind. Slowly, they realized that this housekeeper was actually not simple. He walked, by floating. Chapter 2491. In the blink of an eye, no less than 40 to 50 letters had already turned into ashes. How can it be so easy to get past me? His silent posture and expression clearly expressed such a meaning. He had racked his brains to write dozens of letters in a row. But, all of them had been turned into ashes. Chuyang was truly angry. This bastard is obviously making things difficult for me on purpose, playing with me. Chuyang was unable to restrain his anger. He said that he wanted it simple, so I gave him a simple one, but it didn't work. It didn't work even if it was that simple. Isn't it simple enough to only write one word? He's going too far. Chuyang was furious. He had lived 2 lifetimes and had been through all kinds of storms. He had really never encountered such a predicament. It was too embarrassing. By the way, didn't that butler say just now? Tai Butian reminded him telepathically. Chuyang said furiously, this bastard is obviously unmoved by force or persuasion. In the second letter, I already praised him to be second only to me. How else can I praise him? The 3 women were speechless at the same time. Even I wanted to vomit when I read your second letter. The bootlicking was too obvious, too disgusting. I'll try again. Chuyang wrote another letter fiercely. There was only one word, fuck. Then, he threw the letter in. A cold snort came from inside. Despicable. Chuyang almost broke down. Although Mo Qingwu and Wu Qianqian knew that they shouldn't laugh at this time, they still laughed hysterically. Tai Butian thought for a while. I'll try this time. Then, she took the brush, ink, paper and inkstone from Chuyang. She started writing immediately. Swish swish swish. Tai Butian's brush moved like dragons and snakes. She actually didn't finish writing for a long time. Chuyang was a little surprised by this. He craned his neck to take a look, only to see that Tai Butian had started to fold the book and was still continuing to write. From start to finish, she had written a total of 5 pages and they were all densely packed with words. Her writing speed was rather fast, rather efficient, and rather large. These are enough. Send them in. Tai Butian waved her hand and handed them to Chuyang. So many. Does this have anything to do with simplicity? Chuyang held the letter in his hand. It was thick and heavy, and actually felt quite heavy in his hand. Was this still a letter? It seemed a little like a book. Give it a try. Tai Butian smiled. Against such a person, we really don't have much confidence. We can only try many times. Even if it doesn't work this time, we can always try again. Chuyang had no choice but to take it and throw it in. Unexpectedly, there was actually a reaction this time. In less than a moment, a catcher sound could be heard from the inside, followed by a slap sound. The sound of ox-like breathing could be heard. It seemed like the reaction was extremely strong. Chuyang couldn't help but wonder. Returning to a moment ago, he sat silently on the chair like a mountain. With a wave of his hand, the heavy letter flew into his hand. When he opened it, the contents of the first page almost made him explode with anger. The first paragraph, you are called Silent Disaster, right? Was it the gatekeeper? I don't know if you're real or not, but I'll just pretend that you're real. Silent Heart cursed angrily, how can you pretend in a place like this? Why don't you impersonate me? Next was the second paragraph, are you guarding the first level? Was this really the first stage? Why wasn't there even a hint? When we came here, we didn't even know which level we were at. Shouldn't you confirm if this is really the first level? Why isn't there even a card? Even if there isn't a card, you can just write a few words. Even if you don't want to write too much, you can just write a simple one. It's so unclear. How do we know which level this is? What if this is the last level? There were a lot of words below, and the whole article was full of doubts. Just a question of whether this was the first level or not, and there were hundreds of words. Doubts, doubts, disbelief, disbelief, disbelief. In any case, he just didn't believe it. When Silent Heart saw this, he couldn't help but tremble all over. Silent Heart was a person who cherished his words like gold. The thing he hated the most was being long-winded. And the level of long-windedness in this letter had obviously reached a considerable level. However, there was indeed a rule that he had to read the letter seriously from the challenger. He couldn't miss a single word, not a single word. Only then could he be considered guarding the level. If he missed anything, he would be disqualified and banished to the land of darkness. This was an extremely cruel and strict requirement. Hence, he could only read word by word, carefully and seriously. But the more he read, the angrier he got. He had never seen someone so long-winded. The third paragraph. You're called Silent Heart. You're called Silent Heart, right? I don't know if you're Chen or Mo. Or sunken. Or silent. Or Chen Mo. Or Chen Mo. Or. Is it Chen or G or Chen or Chen or Chen or Chen? Mo or Mo. Or Mo. Or Mo or Mo or Mo. Could it be Mo? When he read this, Silent Heart felt that he was about to break down. What the heck? What's wrong with this fellow who wrote this letter? He talked for more than 1,000 words, and it was actually just discussing the specific words of his name. At the end, it was still discussing Silent Heart's name. Which word was it exactly? Which two words? Which combination was it exactly? Then it was a question. I just don't understand. I'm really curious. To be honest, I'm a little surprised. I don't know if it was your father, your mother, or one of your elders who gave you this name. No matter if it's mute, Chen Mo, or sunken, they all seem to be a little. Let's discuss. I don't know what your father, your mother, or any of your elders had when they named you. The psychological change. Did they want you to be mute, sunken, or sunken? Oh my God. The usually silent person let out a long sigh towards the sky, silently wailing. My father, my mother, or any of my elders, when they named me, do I need to explain my feelings to you? Who in the world gave me a name? Your name is too difficult to understand. Without 3 to 5 days, I won't be able to explain it clearly. Let's not talk about you first. Next, let's talk about me. Don't be impatient. You're the guardian, right? You definitely can't get angry, right? As for being impatient and whatnot, that's not important, right? Definitely. Another round of extremely long-winded nagging. Silent Heart used his hands to grab his hair. His eyes were already bloodshot. Who is this person? Who is this person? Who the hell is this person? What he wanted to do the most now was to capture the person who wrote the letter outside and beat him up violently. As he beat him up, he asked, "Can you be any more long-winded? Can you? Can you?" The content of the letter was far from the end. It continued. Where were we just now? Yes, I said I was going to talk about me. I'll explain my name in detail. My surname is Chu. Chu means lovely and moving. It's the Chu of Chu country. However, it's not virgin, nor come out, nor early, nor remove. It's Chu. Do you understand? If you don't understand, I'll use another method to explain it more clearly. That is. Alright, after explaining the two words Chu Yang, more than 1,000 words had passed. And this was only the two words Chu Yang. Silent Heart was no longer silent. He scratched his head crazily and groaned repeatedly. His breathing was as heavy as a cow's. He couldn't take it anymore. He really couldn't take it anymore. Who the hell is this person? Who could write such a letter? This is basically murder, using a soft knife to grind someone to death bit by bit. Save me. All of Silent Heart's emotions were summed up in these 3 words. Just reading this for now, he already had the urge to go crazy countless times. But he still had to endure the soft knife that was grinding someone to death, because this was the duty of the first guardian. Thus, something that made Silent Heart, the guardian of this level, even crazier happened. This time, the ones accompanying me to challenge this level are my wives. The so-called wives are wives, or should I say, wives. Do you understand? If you are inexperienced and don't understand the meaning of this, I can further explain it in detail. If there is a man, there will be a woman, and if there is a woman, there will be a man. It's like the difference between heaven and earth and yin and yang. Yes, speaking of yin and yang, I need to explain it in detail. Heaven and earth are. Yin and yang are. As for yin and yang, there are many explanations. Thousands of words passed. Yes, do you have a wife? That is to say, if you do, if you don't. Just now, I mentioned that the ones accompanying me to challenge this level are my wives. Why do I say wives? It's because I have more than one wife. One of the reasons is because I have a very outstanding appearance. My face is like jade, my eyes are like stars, my features are delicate, and my looks are handsome. Of course, this is only a small part of the reason. The main reason is my character. I have a chivalrous and gentle heart, I have the guts to fight for justice. So they all favor me. One of my wives has the surname Mo. Could it be Mo? Before he finished reading the introduction of his wives, Silent Heart went completely crazy. He screamed and threw the letter on the ground. Panting, he felt his heart beating like a drum, his head was about to explode, and his liver and gallbladder were about to burst. He was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. I can't take it anymore. I can't fucking take it anymore. You can't torture me like this, he roared and jumped up without any warning. His hair and beard stood straight as he rushed out and kicked open the black door. He looked at the four people in front of him and asked in an extremely frantic voice, "Who wrote the letter? Who the fuck wrote this letter? Who the fuck wrote this letter?" He screamed and suddenly pulled out a few strands of his hair. He roared angrily, "Writing such a letter, do you still have any humanity left? Aren't you just torturing me?" Chapter 2492. Silent Disaster was so aggrieved that he was about to cry. His generation had always been concise and comprehensive. Every generation cherished their words like gold. Every generation hated chatterboxes the most. Every generation hated being long-winded and long-winded. Yet he had to bear such a burden, to read the letter. Was this not a fucking job for a human? Furthermore, he had to finish reading every single word of the book. And he had to finish reading it carefully and seriously. This, just as he was in the midst of extreme grief and indignation, he saw the young man in black opposite him smile gently and say, "Since you've opened the door, we've passed." "Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Who said you've passed? I'm going to tear all of you to shreds. I'm so pissed off." Silent Disaster screamed at the sky. From the corner of his eyes, he saw that the door he was in charge of seemed to have, or should have, already opened. Ah! Silent Disaster stood there, dumbfounded. "We've passed just like that. I'm so aggrieved. I'm so indignant." Silent Disaster wept bitterly. "God, aren't you playing with me now? How can you bully me like that?" At this moment, a ray of white light descended from the sky and enveloped Silent Disaster. Silent Disaster's entire body seemed to have become lighter all of a sudden. He floated upwards slowly like an immortal. Gradually, even his face became blurred. Angry and aggrieved roars could still be heard. "Just you wait. I'll definitely find you. You can't torture me like this. This isn't over." He floated higher and further away. Finally, he couldn't be seen at all. Even his voice couldn't be heard. We've passed. Chu Yang looked at the open black door and laughed. Suddenly, he hugged Tai Butian and gave her a loud kiss. Tai Butian's face was red. She struggled hurriedly. Unexpectedly, Chu Yang had already let go of her. He quickly grabbed Mo Qingwu and Wu Qianxian and kissed each of them. They actually tasted the same. Instantly, the three beautiful faces turned the same color. Red. "Your Majesty, how did you come up with this idea?" This is too brilliant, brilliant, really brilliant. Chu Yang couldn't help but admire. Especially after reading that letter, he felt like he was about to collapse, and Tai Butian, the empress of a generation, was actually able to come up with such a plan. She was truly capable of doing what no one else could. There's no other way. I heard from the butler that we have to do the opposite. And the person we're facing is obviously someone who values his words like gold. Tai Butian said gently, that's why I volunteered to do the opposite. Chu Yang, you've always done things swiftly and without any sloppiness. You definitely wouldn't be able to write such a letter. Chu Yang nodded in agreement. Yes, with his temperament, if he were to write this letter, he would definitely not be able to write it. At least, he would not be able to write such an immediate effect. Why is elder sister Tai able to write it? Mo Qingwu asked curiously. Tai Butian was also the empress of a generation. She was decisive in killing and was not inferior to any man. So how could she write such a sloppy and long-winded letter? It was really puzzling. Sigh, actually, it's just that I've seen too much of it. In the past, I had to read memorials every day, so I naturally learned it all by myself. Tai Butian smiled helplessly. The long-winded nature of those helpers is probably not much better than this letter. They keep saying the same thing over and over again just to give the emperor a headache. As long as the emperor has a headache or is annoyed, he'll just casually say, all right, you guys do as you see fit. And so, he'll have all the authority and so on. And in the face of such memorials, you can't even get angry. Because those who dare to do so are all old officials who have worked hard for countless merits. Tai Butian smiled bitterly. So, my self-restraint and self-confidence are definitely much better than this silent one. If I were to be in charge of this, Chu Yang, I'm afraid you'll have to write letters outside for the rest of your life. Chu Yang shuddered subconsciously. When he thought of the terrible consequences that could happen, he couldn't help but feel a lingering fear. Then, he said angrily, if you dare to do so, I'll just rush in and force myself on you, and then open the door myself. Before he could finish his words, he was chased by a red-faced Tai Butian. Chu Yang burst into laughter. Carrying Mo Qingwu in his arms, he took the lead and rushed into the wide-open black door. The second round. What entered their sight was a red door. Apart from the red door, there seemed to be nothing else in this world. Only in front of the door, there seemed to be a man in red standing with his hands behind his back. It was abnormally bright red, like a ball of fire, burning outside the red door. This kind of red was definitely not the same as Mo Qingwu's red. Although Mo Qingwu's red was also extremely bright, it had some gentleness to it. But this red-robed man in front of them was a kind of burning red. Even at a glance, there was a kind of scorching feeling, as if he was a ball of incandescent light. With just one look, Chu Yang and the others felt at the same time that this round was definitely not going to be easy to pass. Thinking about how they passed the previous round by just moving the pen, it was probably going to be difficult to replicate this again. You guys have passed the first round so quickly. You have some skills. The red-robed man's voice was very gentle, but there was a kind of feeling of impatience in his bones. Very good. That silent fellow, it's about time someone came to teach him a lesson. The red-robed man slowly turned around. Look at that fellow's drooping face every day, as if everyone in the world owes him money. He gets angry when he can't get a single fart out of him after 3 strikes. Chu Yang and the others gradually got closer and closer to observe this red-robed man. They saw that he was tall, had a gentle face, was handsome, and had long eyebrows that reached his temples. He was actually a very gentlemanly man. Chu Yang chuckled and said, since this junior thinks that it's senior's intention, then senior might as well open the door and let us pass directly. The red-robed man smiled faintly and shook his head. That won't do. If that's the case, you guys will be happy, but I will be punished. I won't do such a thing that harms myself and benefits others. His eyes looked at the 4 of them and said slowly, my round is not as easy to fool as the previous one. Chu Yang said seriously, senior, please ask for instructions on the conditions to pass this round. The red-robed man smiled. Look at my appearance, You will definitely feel that I'm not easy to get along with. Actually, that's a big mistake. My temper is very gentle, and I judge people by their appearance. He looked at the four of them and saw that they didn't speak. He smiled with great satisfaction and said, "You guys are very teachable. Let me explain this round. The conditions to pass this round are based on the 3 questions I ask. As long as one of you can answer to my satisfaction, you will pass. I will naturally let you pass. But if your questions can't satisfy me, I won't let you pass willingly. Even if you smash me into pieces, that won't be considered a pass. In the end, you still won't get anything. You will only harm others and yourself, and you won't get anything. Do you understand what I'm saying?" Chu Yang said straightforwardly, "Understood, understood. Senior, you are a straightforward person. We will wait for your questions and try our best to answer them. I'm afraid you have misunderstood." The red-robed man shook his head slowly. "My questions can only be answered by one person. And it can't be you. You have been excluded." Chu Yang was very surprised. "What are you saying? I am the leader of this round. Why am I excluded? I am a man, and I don't try my best to pass the round, but let 3 girls pass it for me. This is too unreasonable." The red-robed man smiled. "It doesn't matter if it is reasonable or not. Anyway, this is the rule." He didn't wait for Chu Yang to ask, and continued to explain, "Actually, you were excluded because the first level was broken by your woman. This gave birth to an effect on your path of breaking through. The second and third levels must be broken through by your woman. You have to pass the 3 rounds, and you happen to have 3 women with you. Don't say that this isn't fate. Fate is unpredictable. How can you say that without proof?" The red-robed man looked at Chu Yang meaningfully and said softly, "This is fate. It is not something that can be changed by human strength. If you insist on answering, you will realize that you have already returned to the lake of despair the moment you answer. And you won't be able to see the lake of despair in your lifetime. This is the restriction of this place. Since this is the case, we will be the ones to pass the round." Tai Butian said straightforwardly, "Chu Yang, passing the 3 rounds shouldn't have anything to do with one's battle prowess. I don't think there will be any danger. It is the same for us to pass the round." Chu Yang nodded. You are my wives. If you pass the round, it is equivalent to me passing the round. I really don't understand why there are so many restrictions on this." The man in red roared with laughter and said, "The one who spoke, you don't have the qualifications to pass the trial now because you've already passed the trial. The spirit that exists in you is no longer suitable for my trial. Now, we can only choose one of the remaining 2 to pass the round. If you can pass the round, the remaining person will take on the last round." Although the red-robed man's voice was gentle, it was resolute and unshakable. Mo Qingwu and Wu Qianqian looked at each other and revealed a knowing and confident smile. Mo Qingwu spoke first. "Then, I will take on this round. Let me do it." Wu Qianqian also boasted that she was knowledgeable and multi-talented. How could she be willing to fall behind? "I will choose someone to pass this round. If her answer is not to my liking, all of you will fail." The red-robed man smiled faintly. "It doesn't matter. You can choose." Chu Yang said confidently, "There is no round that the 2 of them can't pass. It will be the same for anyone. I believe in them even more than I believe in myself." These words were really pleasant to the ears. At the very least, he had won the hearts of the 2 beauties. The 2 beauties' gazes were filled with praise and happiness. "You will be the one to answer." The red-robed man looked at Wu Qianqian and said with a smile. This choice greatly surprised everyone. Chapter 2493. Even Chu Yang, Tai Bu Tian, and the others had guessed that if the red-robed man were to choose a candidate to break through, he would certainly choose Mo Qingwu. That was because both of them were red. So, Mo Qingwu should be chosen from the perspective of the same color and luster of their clothes. No one had expected that he would choose Wu Qianqian, who was dressed in white. Both of them are dazzling red. In fact, they are somewhat conflicting. I like to wear red, but I don't like others to wear red in front of me. The red-robed man smiled helplessly and said, everything in this world must be matched. For example, black and white, red and green, and so on. A contrast can make things appear more colorful. The best color for red is green. But there is no green here. So, I have no choice but to settle for white. The red-robed man gave a long speech. Chu Yang and Tai Bu Tian looked at each other. They had both seen through the red-robed man's character. This guy had spoken the truth from beginning to end. He hadn't spoken a single lie. He had said that he wasn't an impatient person. And, it turned out to be true. Because these words were enough to show his love for beauty, as well as his indecisiveness. Wu Chen smiled and said, since Senior has chosen me, please ask your question. We are all straightforward people. The sooner we answer the question, the sooner we can get this over with. It's convenient for you and convenient for me. The red-robed man stared at Wu Chen for a long time. Then, he sighed and said, what a straightforward argument. I like it very much. So, I'll only ask one question. Little girl, your actions have actually reminded me of the past that was covered in dust for a long time. Since you can make me recall the past, I'll spare you 2 questions. Wu Chen smiled and said, thank you for your help. I hope that this question won't be too difficult. The red-robed man looked up at the sky and said, there's one thing that has been stuck in my heart for a long time. Today, you must listen to a story if you want to answer my question. Wu Chen said, please speak. The red-robed man shook his head and smiled bitterly. He was filled with a feeling that he couldn't bear to look back on the past. He was no longer as straightforward as before. The red-robed man waved his sleeve. A table and 2 stools suddenly appeared in front of the red door. Then, he took the lead and sat down on the main seat. Wu Chen glanced at Chu Yang. Then, she walked over and sat opposite the red-robed man under Chu Yang's encouraging gaze. My name is Lai Hua. You can call me that for the time being. The red-robed man Lai Hua said. Yes. Wu Chen agreed, but she firmly engraved these 2 words in her heart. This might be the key to answering the question. Raging fire. Many years ago, I was born in the capital of a country. My family is one of the most powerful families in the world. I'm the only child in the family. Since I was young, I've been living a life of luxury, and had everything I wanted. Opposite my family's old mansion is an official's mansion. In that mansion, there is a girl called Yu Xiuxiu. The first show is a beautiful show, and the second show is a show full of spirit and beauty. Chu Yang cursed in his heart, aren't those 2 shows still one show? He actually asked how to show off first and how to show off second. Silence was a man of few words. This self-proclaimed Lai Hua seemed to be a chatterbox. I liked Yu Xiuxiu very much. Moreover, our 2 families were engaged since we were young. At that time, everyone knew that Yu Xiuxiu was my future wife, the future wife of the clan head of our family. Lai Hua slowly narrated, but his words were full of melancholy. Not only me, Yu Xiuxiu also acknowledged this point. Until one day, she met her destiny. An almighty person saw that Xiuxiu was a talent with great potential, and took her as a disciple. To her, this was naturally a great fortune, but to me, from then on, Xiuxiu left my sight, and I never saw her again. I kept waiting. Until I was 28 years old. During that time, Xiuxiu came to see me many times. Moreover, during this time, my family met with great difficulties several times, and it was always Xiuxiu and her fellow disciples who helped. It could be said that I received many favors from Xiuxiu. However, after so many years, Xiuxiu finally felt that the 2 of us were no longer compatible. Because at that time, she had already achieved some success in her cultivation. She was known as the Cloud Immortal. To the secular world, she was a transcendent existence like an immortal. Although our family was rich and powerful, we were still just an ordinary family. At most, we were just slightly stronger ants in the eyes of an immortal. In order to make up for it, or to shorten the distance between Xiuxiu and me, I tried my best to catch up, tried my best to cultivate, and would rather use up all my family's wealth, to look for a famous teacher. However, my innate talent was not good, and my bones were not suitable for cultivation. The progress of my cultivation was very slow, and wanting to catch up to Shosho was simply a fool's dream. Because of this, I used up all my family's wealth, as well as the heavenly treasures that I worked hard to obtain, and asked an expert to help me change the bones in my body, including my skull, one by one, one by one, one by one. My bloodline was not good, so I asked him to drain my blood and replace it with the legendary blood of the divine dragon. My meridians were not good, so I asked someone to break all the meridians in my body, and then I was paralyzed for 3 years. 3 years, one meridian after another was reconnected. All of this was for Shosho. All of this was so that I could shorten the distance between me and her, and marry her. Finally, I succeeded. I was truly reborn, and became a genius of the world. My cultivation progressed by leaps and bounds. When Lai Hua said "till here," Chu Yang and the rest were all aghast. Lai Hua's description just now was extremely understated, and did not use any embellished words. It was just a plain description. However, Chu Yang and the rest were all profound cultivators, so how could they not know how difficult it was, how painful it was to change all the bones in one's body, one by one? How painful and dangerous it was to drain all the blood in one's body. As for breaking all the meridians in one's body and being paralyzed for 3 years, how painful was that? It was simply unimaginable. And this Lai Hua actually did it all, just to catch up to his fiancée's footsteps. This person's perseverance and endurance could be said to be unparalleled since ancient times. This kind of tenacity and perseverance, not to mention Tai Butian and the other 2 girls, even Chu Yang might not be able to do it if he were in Lai Hua's shoes. Once, my master told me that the kind of pain I endured could be said to be the best in the world since ancient times. Not only was it unprecedented, it might also be the last. But when I endured such pain that no one could endure, experienced pain that no one could endure, and finally succeeded, and then on the day I found Susu with infinite hope, she told me that she was going to get married. Lai Hua's eyes flashed with an indescribable sense of loss. We have always been friends. Even in the past, Shosho and I talked about everything with each other. She respected me, and I liked her. But that day, she stood in front of me and told me that she was going to get married. That kind of happiness that came from the bottom of her heart, and that kind of guilt that begged for my forgiveness, broke my heart into pieces. Lai Hua laughed bitterly. This is my story. I won't tell you what happened in the future because it has nothing to do with you. I only want to ask you one question, little girl. Lai Hua laughed miserably and asked, if the person you love at all costs fell in love with someone else at all costs, what would you do? Lai Hua's question stunned Wu Qian. The person you love at all costs fell in love with someone else at all costs. What would you do? There was no way to answer this question, because there was no answer to this question. If the person you love the most had the person you love the most, you could choose to fulfill the wish of the person you love the most, because she is the person you love the most. But the situation now was at all cost. Lai Hua had paid too much for the person he loved. Could he really be willing to fulfill the wish of the person he loved? Senior's question is really difficult for me. No matter how I answer it, it is not right. At least in my opinion, it is so. Wu Qian frowned. The red-robed man Lai Hua did not speak. He only looked at her quietly. Senior is a man after all, and we live in an era where a man has 3 wives and 4 concubines is normal. But a woman can only be faithful to one. This is the law of this era. Wu Qian chose her words carefully. You can imagine how tangled your heart would be if you were to encounter such a situation. And, Senior has suffered so much in order to achieve this wish. So, if you were to give up for the sake of the person you love the most, then, all of your previous efforts, all of your hardships, everything would be like a joke, a sad joke. The red-robed man said, if you were the person involved, what would you choose? Wu Qian suddenly felt a heart-wrenching pain. Her beautiful eyes immediately became misty. Her expression was somewhat weak. She said softly, if I... Ha ha. She laughed bitterly. In fact, wasn't she facing such a situation at that time? The person she loved deeply didn't have her in his eyes. He only loved someone else deeply. I'm not Senior. I don't know how Senior chose. But if I were you, I would only choose to quietly look at him. I love him, I give my all. I won't take the initiative to destroy his situation. I will only silently give and silently bear. Then, I will silently rejoice and silently feel heartache. All my efforts, all my bitterness, all my everything, was for the sake of loving him. As long as he is happy, he is happy, he is perfect. What else can I not be satisfied with if my heart is fulfilled? Wu Qianqian's eyes were somewhat misty at this moment. She thought of the days when she was secretly in love with Chu Yang. For Wu Qianqian, those days were happy, bitter, miserable, and secretly satisfied days. My heart is the same. My heart is the same. My heart is perfect. Why not? The red-robed man was somewhat stunned. He was speechless for a long time. Chapter 2494. I don't know what to do, really. Wu Qianqian said in a low voice, you love someone at all costs, but you love someone else at all costs. This is an unsolvable situation. But, the final result won't be perfect if you force her to carry out the engagement. Maybe 2 people will suffer for the rest of their lives. Maybe 3 people will suffer for the rest of their lives. But, you may be the only one who will suffer if you let her go. You have already sacrificed everything for the sake of the person you love. So, what's the harm in sacrificing a little more? Wu Qianqian said. You have to let go for the sake of the person you love, even if it's unfair, even if it's uncomfortable. Just for the sake of the person you love. She raised her head and looked at the red-clothed man. She said, this is the opinion of this junior. Senior, please don't laugh at me. I don't know if this junior's answer will satisfy you or dissatisfy you. The red-clothed man let out a long sigh and was silent for a long time. Then, he slowly turned around so that the other 4 couldn't see the expression on his face. He murmured as if he was sighing, pass. Chu Yang and the other 3 people didn't feel happy when they heard this pass. Instead, they felt very uncomfortable in their hearts. They thought of the bitterness that Wu Qianqian had suffered in secret. They thought of the despair and helplessness that the red-clothed man had felt when he was forced to let go of his own accord. Everyone felt an indescribable sadness in their hearts. It took a long time for them to calm down. They didn't feel the joy and pleasure of passing the test. The red door that had been closed all this time suddenly opened, revealing a shining path. It zigzagged into the distance. The red-clothed man's back was still facing them. He didn't turn his head. But, his figure was slowly fading. Gradually, it became faintly discernible. The 4 people silently walked on that path. They walked a few steps. Then, Chu Yang finally turned his head and asked, Senior, may I ask, what did you choose at that time? This was undoubtedly a question that the 4 people had in common. They wouldn't forget this question for the rest of their lives if they didn't ask it now. The man in red said in a low voice, from the beginning to the end, she has never treated me badly. From the beginning to the end, Susu has always believed that being with me is the most relaxing and the most comfortable time. Moreover, it is also the time when she does not need to worry about anything. Thus, from the beginning to the end, she has always regarded me as her father, or as her biological brother. But she has never thought of me as her lover. That is all. His silhouette became fainter and fainter. It was almost impossible to see him clearly. His entire silhouette floated up in a trance. His voice was almost inaudible. In the end, I had a little sister. But, she was also lonely for the rest of her life. Since that day, I haven't seen her, even once. I didn't let her know about any of the things I did. If she chooses me, perhaps I will let her know what I have sacrificed, let her understand my feelings for her, to deepen our relationship. But since she didn't choose me, I don't want her to know what I've done. That would be too heavy a burden for her. I don't want her to be burdened so heavily. She is happy. The last sentence was followed by a soft chuckle. It was as thin as gossamer, ha. When love reaches the depths. No complaints, the voice was still lingering here. But, the man in red's silhouette resolutely turned into mist and disappeared in a flash. However, the The desolation and deep affection in his last few words turned into a thick melancholy, lingering in the world for a long time. Everyone sighed, and their hearts became even heavier. In the end, he had a little sister. A little sister. How could there be a little sister? It must be that he had helped his beloved to break off their engagement and recognized her as his little sister. Thus, he had cut off his infatuation. More importantly, he had let his beloved let go of the shackles of her heart. She could chase after the happiness she wanted wholeheartedly and live a happy life. What about himself? When love reaches the depths, no complaints. Could he really have no complaints? If it was true, how could he not see her for his entire life? How could he die alone? For a woman, from youth to old age, who knows how many years he had to spend? Congenitally deficient, I change. I spent all my wealth just to follow your footsteps. I wanted to catch up with your footsteps. I extracted all the bones in my body and replaced them all. Just to chase after your standards, I extracted all the blood in my body and replaced them all, just to be able to match your excellence. I broke all the meridians in my body and reconnected them, just to be able to be with you openly. Your heart is not with me. You are going to marry someone else. When I saw your happiness and pleading, your hope and guilt, I felt that I shouldn't and couldn't destroy your happiness. The moment you begged me, my world collapsed and ceased to exist. My heart was breaking, my feelings were disintegrating, my will was collapsing, but I still had to tell you with a smile, silly girl, actually, I have always treated you as a younger sister. Then, I swallowed all my bitterness, all my difficulties, all my pain, without letting anyone know. From then on, I had a younger sister. From then on, I would be alone for the rest of my life. From then on, I would roam the world. From then on, I would never see you again. Because seeing you would make you sad. Because seeing you would make your other half overthink. Sooner or later, he would be able to see my feelings for you. That would inevitably cause misunderstandings and estrangement between the two of you. More so, as long as I see you. I might never bear to leave again. What kind of feelings were these? Chu Yang, if it were you, what would you choose? Tai Butian turned and looked at Chu Yang seriously. Chu Yang laughed bitterly. I don't know, I really don't know. I also asked myself this question just now. But in the end, I really don't know what kind of choice I would make. Mo Qingwu hugged Chu Yang's arm and whispered, I don't know either. Tai Butian shook her head and smiled bitterly. Everyone here was obviously crazy. Those who said they didn't know, basically, would choose the same way as this red-robed man if they really encountered the same situation. How could they put him, her, in a difficult position if they loved him, her, deeply? Since he, her, didn't put him, her, in a difficult position, then they could only pay the price by suffering alone. Perhaps Wu Qianqian and herself were blissful on this point. Because this was a society where men and women were unequal after all. Years of war, the huge disparity in the ratio of men and women created this inequality. Fortunately, with this inequality, she didn't have to live a miserable life and die alone, but, if there came a day when this situation improved and the ratio of men and women returned to normal, what would happen? When that time came, wouldn't there be even more crazy men and resentful women? But with the current situation, would there be fewer crazy men and resentful women? This was a heavy topic that no one in the world could truly explain and solve since ancient times. It was love. Perhaps in the future, many years in the future, it would still be an unsolvable problem. Tai Butian shook her head and smiled bitterly. She stopped herself from letting her imagination run wild. Because no matter what, there was absolutely no standard answer to this question. What was right and proper in one's heart might not be so in the eyes of others. Who could say for sure? The four of them strolled slowly on that winding path. They didn't use any cultivation to speed up, just like ordinary people, taking a stroll after dinner. They walked like this for a long time. The story of the red-robed man Lai Hua made the four of them feel very depressed and very heavy. But it also seemed to have unraveled something. Is he really called Lai Hua? Mo Qingwu asked thoughtfully. Silly. Chu Yang rubbed Mo Qingwu's hair lovingly. The name Yu Xiuxiu may be his real name, but Lai Hua or whatever, is definitely a fake name. Wu Qianqian sighed softly and said, "He's only saying that in his entire life, from the beginning to the end, it was the feeling of placing his own body on top of a raging fire. That's why he wore red clothes and was named Lai Hua. That's a painful memory that can never be erased. Could it be that Yu Xiuxiu, whom he loved deeply, really believed that he only had feelings for her as a brother, and then didn't care about it anymore? Lying to others and herself?" Mo Qingwu frowned, somewhat indignant. "This woman is too heartless." Wu Qianqian smiled bitterly. "Silly sister, if you had a fiancé when you were young, and he still loved you deeply, but when you grew up and liked Chu Yang, at this time, your fiancé said that he had always treated you as a sister. Even if you knew that this was a lie, would you expose it? Would you give up Chu Yang and be with him because of his thoughtfulness, because he had always been giving up without any complaints?" Mo Qingwu shook her head resolutely. "Of course not." She suddenly realized. Then it settled. People have the same heart, the same reason, everything is like this. Wu Qianqian smiled bitterly. "Since you can't give him what he wants, then what can you give him? If you really expose this warm lie, you will face an embarrassing situation where both sides want to die. Or we will no longer be friends, but enemies. Pretending to be confused at this time is the most appropriate choice. Even if outsiders think that you are heartless, you can only do so. That's because this is the best way to understand each other. It's also the best way to protect and respect each other. The other party has already done too much for you. So, what's a little bit of grievance to you if you bear the infamy of being heartless?" Wu Qianqian heaved a long sigh. "Although it is so bitter, the most difficult thing in the world is this kind of love that you have to let go of but can't bear to." Chapter 2495. Chu Yang sighed deeply. "I'm only worried about whether Qing Wu will be hurt in this illusory array. As for whether she will succeed or not, that's secondary. Tai Bu Tian and Wu Qianqian didn't know this in the end. That's because they couldn't have imagined that Mo Qingwu possessed the memories of 2 lifetimes. Moreover, these memories were the complete opposite of each other. The past and present lives were nothing more than a test for them. However, they would never forget that they were living in this life. But Mo Qingwu was fundamentally different. Her original heart was already confused. Her thoughts were already in chaos. How could she maintain her clarity? Mo Qingwu only felt her vision spinning. Then, it was chaos again. When she opened her eyes again, she found that her body had become smaller. She became an 8-year-old girl again. She was infinitely happy and loved by her clan. She was gifted and had 3 yin. Everyone in her clan looked at her as if they were looking at the future supreme martial artist. She was infinitely glorious. She was really loved by everyone. Then, she sneaked out for fun and was plotted against by someone. Only when she returned home did she find out that her 3-yin meridian was destroyed. Then, she immediately became a piece of trash that no one cared about. The huge contrast made the little girl, who had always been ignorant of the world, suddenly collapse. From a place of infinite light, she suddenly fell into endless darkness. She grew to the age of 17 or 18 without her family's concern. Then, her family suddenly announced that she was going to marry a notorious licentious person. So, Mo Qingwu ran away from home in anger. Finally, she escaped to a place to live in seclusion. Although this place was remote and unwilling, it was a place that her second brother found for her. It was a purple bamboo forest with purple bamboos. Suddenly, one day, a man came here. His name was Chu Yang. Mo Qingwu clearly felt that she was going through the miserable experiences of her previous life. And, she was going through them once again. Her soul was broken, and her spirit was broken. That time, she watched Chu Yang leave resolutely. She begged him bitterly, but he was indifferent. That time, she said to him, "If you want to practice your sword, practice with me. Use my heart, use my feelings. Practice your sword." That time, finally, she was ambushed. She was fatally injured. Her life was in danger. That sword came from the sky. How would she feel when she lay in that familiar embrace again? In the last moments of her life, she was lying in the arms of the person she loved the most. And this heartless person had never promised her anything. She looked at his tearful face, crying like a child. Under such circumstances, the dying man felt a trace of joy and happiness in his heart. "So, you are finally willing to shed tears for me. You love me after all," a voice rang out faintly. "Mo Qingwu, did you see that?" Mo Qingwu said in a low voice, "I saw it. It's this man who ruined your life. If it wasn't for this man, you would still be living a peaceful life. It's his appearance that broke your heart, shattered your soul, made your love life difficult, broke your heart and soul, and made it impossible for you to have a good ending. Do you hate him? Did she hate him?" Faced with this question, Mo Qingwu blankly looked at the picture. She had begged time and time again, and she had sacrificed time and time again without any complaints or regrets. But she had only been ruthlessly left time and time again. Hate. "I hate him." Mo Qingwu bit her lip, immersed in the negative emotions of being abandoned, and finally said in a low voice, "Such a person deserves revenge." That voice was tempting her. Mo Qingwu said in a daze, "Yes. You gave your body, your heart, and your love, but all these can't compare to that cold sword of his." That voice said, Aren't you much better looking than a sword?" Mo Qingwu only felt a fire burning in her heart, and she couldn't control herself anymore. "Think about it. How should you take revenge on him?" That voice was full of bewitchment. "Killing him with one strike is really letting him off too easily. Yes. Killing him with one strike is letting him off too easily." Mo Qingwu murmured. "Then how should I take revenge?" That voice said. "How should I take revenge on him?" Mo Qingwu said unconsciously. She stood there in a daze, and suddenly thought of this life. Chu Yang cherished her so much. He played with her, and thought of everything for her. Everything was because he worked hard for her. Why did he do it? Iron Cloud was full of beauties, but Chu Yang would rather cover himself with a ferocious mask. Wu Qianqian was deeply in love with him, and remained faithful to him until death. But Chu Yang, who was still weak, resolutely broke into the lower three heavens for her. Butterfly Knot, dreaming of a gentle dance saber. In a misty place, Mo Qingwu seemed to hear Ji-mo tell her a poem that Chu Yang softly recited when she left the lower three heavens. "The autumn wind is gentle, the autumn water is cold, and the sorrow of separation is sad. In this life, only Qingwu is silent, and I will break through the heavens for you. In this life, only Qingwu is silent, and I will break through the heavens for you. Brother Chu Yang. Although in the end, you still accepted Wu Qianqian and Tai Butian because you were deeply in love with them, I can understand you. You betrayed me in your previous life, and you can't bear the same debt in this life. That way, you won't be able to repay it in all your lifetimes. I can always feel your love for me." Mo Qingwu's face darkened, and she frowned. "The best and most perfect revenge is, of course, to make him fall in love with me, love me until the seas run dry, and then marry him and torture him for the rest of his life." Ah! That voice obviously didn't expect to get such an answer. It was very surprised for a moment. She was hurt so badly, and she still wanted to marry him? Mo Qingwu smiled softly and said, "I'm not surprised that you can create my past life's experiences. But you think that because I have the memories of both my past and present life, and because it is difficult to merge them, I will be easily manipulated by you, and become your puppet. You are gravely mistaken." "Why?" that voice asked strangely. "You didn't notice, when I was on the verge of death in my past life, he rushed over, and I was so satisfied." Mo Qingwu smiled affectionately. "Love is a sacrifice, and sacrifice is a sacrifice without complaint or regret. When I saw him rush over heartbroken, and cry for me, at that time, I had already completely forgiven him. You don't understand, at that time, although I was on the verge of death, I was actually the happiest. That's why I said, Chu Yang, if there is a next life, I hope you will look at me more. I am prettier than the sword." Mo Qingwu smiled miserably. "My wish is for him to look at me more. I didn't ask him not to look at his sword. There is no conflict between me and the sword, so you actually didn't know?" That voice was speechless. And from that moment on, the Mo Qingwu of my past life was already dead. Mo Qingwu's eyes became brighter and brighter. "What belongs to me now is the Mo Qingwu of this life, and only the Mo Qingwu of this life. Why would I reject the happiness of this life for the regret of my past life?" Mo Qingwu smiled faintly. Then you are underestimating me, Mo Qingwu, and the infatuation of all the women in the world. Mo Qingwu smiled and said, I guess, the person who set up this hurdle must be a man. And only a man would think this way, and completely not understand what a woman's love is like. At this point, that voice was completely speechless. Perhaps the focus of their worries was different, but not only Chu Yang, even the person who set up these 3 hurdles in the first place also thought that this third hurdle was the most crucial of the 3 hurdles, and also the most dangerous one that was highly likely to be impossible to pass. A single mistake would not only cause the entire game to be lost, but it would also cause everyone to perish here. However, no one would have thought that this hurdle would be so easy for Mo Qingwu, and she would be able to walk through it with such ease. There was only one reason for this, and that was, as Mo Qingwu said, they didn't understand women. Whether it was the person who set up the hurdles or Chu Yang, they didn't really understand women. In the imagination of Chu Yang and that voice, Mo Qingwu's past life was filled with countless negative emotions such as desolation, despair, unwillingness, and so on. It was hard to imagine that Mo Qingwu actually left contentedly and without resentment. The most crucial and most dangerous point of this hurdle, the entry point of the illusory array, was actually completely ineffective to Mo Qingwu. She passed through the seemingly deadly array even more easily than the previous 2 hurdles. It's just that I still have a lot of feelings for this hurdle, and I'm even full of gratitude, because this hurdle made me think through a lot. Mo Qingwu looked up, her small face glistening, and said softly, the Mo Qingwu of the past life is already a thing of the past. Just like the Chu Yang of the past life, it's impossible for him to become the Chu Yang of this life. So, sometimes I get caught up in the tangled nature of my past life and this life, going back and forth. Not only is it a pressure for me, it's also a great pressure for Chu Yang, and it's also a kind of great injustice. I can't always show the look of a resentful woman in this life just because of a little regret in my past life. It's not beneficial to myself, it's harmful to others, it's harmful to others, it's harmful to others and myself, why bother? Mo Qingwu said proudly, if I let my personality continue to be divided, in the long run, my happiness in this life will also be affected by my past life. That's undoubtedly the most stupid and lamentable result. For a woman, there's nothing more important than the happiness in front of her at this moment. So, I'm sincerely grateful to this illusory array. It made me understand everything, and I understand the importance of cherishing what I have in front of me. So, I've decided, after this illusory array, I'll let the Mo Qingwu of the past life completely hide. Mo Qingwu said resolutely, from now on, only the carefree Mo Qingwu will appear, the carefree little girl who's happy every day, and not the Mo Qingwu who's always full of resentment and sadness. Thank you. Mo Qingwu bowed solemnly in the direction of the voice. Chapter 2496. And that voice had completely lost its ability to speak. Mo Qingwu looked at the scene in front of her, cherishing every detail of her previous life. Slowly, a smile appeared on her face as she murmured, actually, Qingwu from the previous life, you are you, and I am me. Your life is tragic, but mine is blissful. Please, don't come and destroy my happiness. Or rather, don't destroy the happiness that you once dreamed of. Because, we got it, didn't we? He still has the calamity sword in this life, but when he's with me, he looks at me more than the calamity sword. Your wish has already been fulfilled, hasn't it? I'm going to marry him very soon. If you like, we can be together, because you are me. But, I'm still me. I'll bring your hopes and wishes with me to marry him. And I won't accept you appearing with resentment again. Please forgive my selfishness, because I really don't want to torture him anymore. Really, he's already compensated Mo Qingwu too much, Mo Qingwu murmured softly, as if talking to herself, but also as if talking to someone else. How did this happen? At a place far, 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 far away. A young man in white opened his eyes wide. He looked at the scene of the past life and present life. His face was full of disbelief, confusion, and doubt. He said gloomily, I originally wanted to watch a good show. Why didn't we follow the script? Preposterous. How preposterous. What about the rest of the script? What to do? Beside him, a peerless beauty laughed heartily. I already said that you don't understand women, but you're still not convinced. Now you know that you're not omnipotent, right? We made a bet. But you lost, so you have to accept your loss. The white-robed youth seemed to be angry out of humiliation. How did I lose? That Mo Qingwu clearly didn't play her cards according to logic. How did I lose? A cold-faced girl beside him laughed mockingly. Winning is winning, losing is losing. There's no excuse for gambling. Could it be that the famous evil monarch? Now, you actually know how to act shamelessly? The white-clothed youth said angrily. But if I lose like this, won't I lose my greatest joy? It's not like you don't know that my biggest wish is to let Big Sister my return to her original form, to rub her little butt for fun. It wasn't easy to get her to bet with me, but she actually lost. I'm so unwilling to accept this. Before he could finish his words, the beauty beside him had already chased after him furiously. A certain white-clothed youth covered his head and scurried away like a rat due to a moment of shame and anger. As he dodged, he said, "Spare me, spare me. This level isn't over yet. It's better to watch carefully. What if there's a big reversal? What great reversal? There's no suspense at all." That peerless beauty curled her lips and said, "That Chu Yang is a man of emotions. He will absolutely not make a mistake." The white-clothed youth rolled his eyes and said, "Not necessarily. You may not necessarily lose if you bet. Do you want to make another bet?" The two girls asked at the same time, "What are we betting on?" The white-clothed youth smiled slyly and said, "Let's bet on whether he can pass or not. I bet that Chu Yang can pass." The two girls stared at him with disdain and snorted at the same time. "You really know how to take advantage of others. Such a sure-win bet, and you still have the nerve to suggest it. But don't you think that others are too stupid? Who would bet with you?" The white-clothed youth laughed loudly. That peerless beauty pondered for a while and said, "Monsieur, after Chu Yang passes this time, I'm afraid that he will really walk on the same path as you." The white-clothed youth nodded and said, "Yes. This is a great thing. In this world, there are only the few of us. It's really too lonely." The peerless beauty said, "You mean, he can reach your level?" Her voice revealed a lot of uncertainty. The white-clothed youth pondered and said, "This is really hard to say. This little guy. Apart from the beginning, he still followed the rules. Later on, he started to mess around. Maybe, he won't be like me. Instead, he will walk on his own path. The current test. It's basically the last test that I set up. I'm afraid that I won't be able to use it in the future. Because he has already gradually surpassed that level. After breaking through this test, he will be free from the constraints of anyone and any external force. He will start to walk on his own path openly." The white-clothed youth's eyes were full of interest. As for his own path, how far he can go, what realm, and what level he can reach before he can join us. This is an unknown. Now, Chu Yang is already an existence that is beyond the estimation of the heavenly Tao. The three words unknown made the white-clothed beauty ask in astonishment. "Yes." The white-clothed youth nodded deeply. "It's not just him. Even the people around him have also escaped the control of the heavenly Tao because of this. Because, the tribulation is the same. Now, although they have already surpassed the predestined path set by the heavenly Tao, because of the long-term tacit understanding, the feelings between them are inseparable. So as long as one of them reaches it, the others will catch up one by one like there's a string pulling them." Sigh. He sighed softly and said, "Old Black must be very happy now. Because suddenly, there will be more than 10 opponents. They will definitely fight to their heart's content." The white-clothed beauty rolled her eyes at him and said disdainfully, "Is Old Black the only one who is happy?" The white-clothed youth smiled obsequiously and said, "Actually, I'm already very satisfied with you guys. I don't want anything else." Hee hee. Really? You guys must believe what I said, right? The two beauties spat at the same time and said in unison, "I'd rather believe that there are ghosts in this world than believe your broken mouth. Your credibility has long been broken, the white-clothed youth said exaggeratedly. Am I really so untrustworthy? In the distance, another white-clothed beauty rushed over and threw herself into his arms with a smile. You are so shameless and untrustworthy, but I just like it, hey. The two beauties next to her sighed at the same time. Xiao Yi. Why can't you grow up? People at least know how to turn back after hitting a wall. You say how many times you've hit the wall. The white-clothed youth laughed complacently and suddenly said very seriously, Old Black is here to make trouble again. Let's hurry up and leave. As he said, his eyes turned and muttered, there are so many more opponents. I can't let Old Black take the initiative. I'll increase some hatred first. Suddenly, he waved his hand and the beauties disappeared at the same time. A few shy and embarrassed voices came. Nonsense. Old Black didn't come at all. Let go of me. You indecent pervert. The starry dreamlike space gradually dissipated and returned to reality. Mo Qingwu stood there in her red clothes. The starry door had disappeared at this moment. The third level, broken. Although he saw that Qingwu returned safely, Chu Yang was still a little worried and called out, Qingwu? Mo Qingwu woke up from a dream and turned around. She cheered, Brother Chu Yang. Suddenly, she jumped into Chu Yang's arms happily like a swallow in the forest. Then, she whispered in Chu Yang's ear, Elder Brother Chu Yang. I miss you so much. Chu Yang smiled. Chu Yang's heart moved and he suddenly hugged her in ecstasy. Qingwu, you finally broke through. Mo Qingwu nodded delicately. Her face was full of playfulness and joy. Chu Yang cheered. He held Mo Qingwu in his arms and started to spin around without restraint. He was obviously very happy in his heart. Wu Qian and Tai Biu Tian really didn't understand. Chu Yang said that he finally broke through. Was there a need to be so ecstatic? Such vicissitudes. Such apprehension. The two of them didn't know that when Chu Yang said that he broke through, he didn't mean that he broke through the illusion of past and present life. Instead, he broke through the illusion of past and present life in the true sense. From now on, the two lives would have nothing to do with each other and there would be no more barriers. Mo Qingwu crawled on Chu Yang like an octopus. She said coquettishly, Chu Yang, you've already repaid everything from your past life. You don't have to bear it anymore. Your last tears satisfied me from my past life. I've let it go, so you should let it go too. If you continue to feel guilty in this life, it's unfair to us. Chu Yang was stunned. He was dumbfounded. Yes, the past and present life were fundamentally different. If he continued to bear it, it would be unfair to everyone. This hurdle was not only the hurdle of Mo Qingwu's past and present life, but also his own past and present life. Suddenly, he was overwhelmed with emotions. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. Mo Qingwu, who was leaning on his shoulder, suddenly blushed, turning into the color of her own clothes. She whispered shyly in Chu Yang's ear, Brother Chu Yang, when we get out of here, you can eat me. After saying that, she buried her face in Chu Yang's chest and said vaguely, Brother Chu Yang. Qingwu is yours. Chu Yang, who had let go of all the knots in his heart, shouted excitedly. Almost at the same time, he felt that he had a reaction, a very big reaction. Mo Qingwu, who had almost no gap between them, immediately sensed a certain someone's bad change. She stretched out her slender hand and pinched Chu Yang's waist. She said shyly, Brother Chu Yang is so naughty. Chu Yang mischievously smiled. Then, he impudently sucked Mo Qingwu's delicate earlobe with his lips. He then murmured vaguely, Okay. I will chew and swallow slowly. I will eat inch by inch carefully, until even the bones are not left behind. I have missed you so much. At this moment, Chu Yang had an urge to cry from happiness. He truly felt that the past and present life were clearly separated. You are you, the Chu Yang of the past life. I am me, the minister of this life. Chapter 2497. Mo Qingwu's entire body was on fire. She punched him twice on the back and said, Bad guy. Her entire body went soft. Tai Butian and Wu Chanxian looked at the two of them in astonishment. They could faintly feel that there was something else going on. Although they didn't understand, they saw how relaxed the two of them were. That was an unprecedented attitude. They couldn't help but feel happy for them. Wu Chanxian said sourly, "All right, let's stop being so lovey-dovey. Since we've broken through, let's hurry over. Let's see what's going on. As for being intimate, Sister Tiantian and I will make room for the two of you when we're out of the lake of despair." Mo Qingwu was embarrassed. She jumped down from Chu Yang's body and onto Wu Chanxian. She acted coquettishly. Everyone laughed loudly. Finally, the four of them entered the place after the starlight disappeared completely. Mo Qingwu held onto Tai Butian's left hand and Wu Chanxian's right hand. They walked forward happily, talking as they walked. Chu Yang smiled and followed at the side. However, at this moment, another change occurred. Chu Yang's heart was suddenly filled with an inexplicable sense of danger. He shouted, "Get out of the way!" But his warning came too late. A spot of light appeared in the void in front of them without any warning. The light split into three and flashed past rapidly. It was an extreme speed that could almost be traced back to ancient times. In an instant, it reached the chests of Mo Qingwu, Wu Chanxian, and Tai Butian. Their hearts. The light gradually faded and revealed their original form. They were three swords. But how could there be such fast swords in the world? Even if the Calamity Sword was fully activated and used the Massacre the World, which was known for its speed, it couldn't match the speed of these three swords. They had just appeared. In the next moment, they had already reached the heart. Chu Yang didn't think much at all. It was a completely instinctive reaction. His body fell horizontally. In the nick of time, he stood horizontally in front of the three ladies. The Heaven Tribulation Divine Technique was unleashed to its limit at this moment. Poof, poof, poof. Three swords. Without exception, all of them stabbed deeply into Chu Yang's body. The left sword stabbed deeply into Chu Yang's forehead. The right sword stabbed deeply into Chu Yang's heart. The sword stabbed deeply into Chu Yang's dantian from the right. Amidst the anxious and sorrowful cries of the three women, Chu Yang's body made a plop sound. He fell heavily to the ground and breathed out weakly, heaving a sigh of relief. It was as if he was truly gratified and relieved that he was able to successfully protect the three girls at that moment. Chu Yang, the three women screamed at the top of their lungs at the same time. In an instant, they felt as if the world had lost all color in front of them. Without the person he loved, so what if he had the entire world? Looking at the three swords on Chu Yang's body, only the hilts remained. At the same time, the three women felt that their hearts were being shattered into pieces inch by inch at this moment. He had just passed, and he had just had the time to rejoice, but suddenly, such a tragic turn of events occurred. For a moment, the three women's bodies were on the verge of collapse, their mouths wide open. But he couldn't make a sound. Chu Yang chuckled mischievously. Even though the extreme pain was invading every nerve in his body, he still forced himself to reveal a smile. Then, he said softly, "In this world, as long as I'm alive, no one can hurt you. I'm very gratified that I did it." Chu Yang didn't know why, but his heart suddenly felt extremely relaxed. "Don't speak." Mo Qingwu, Tai Butian, and Wu Chanxian burst into tears. They stood in front of Chu Yang, trembling all over. Looking at the three swords that were deeply embedded in Chu Yang's body, they wanted to move but didn't dare to. Every sword was inserted deeply into the ground, leaving only the hilt outside. If it was just a simple injury, no matter how serious the injury was, there was nothing that heavy pills couldn't heal. More importantly, the three swords were at the vital points, one on the forehead, one on the heart, one on the dantian, each was the most fatal point. If he didn't move recklessly, Chu Yang might be able to prolong his life for a moment. If he moved recklessly, he would be finished on the spot. The three women felt as if the world had turned dark and there was no more light. Wu Chanxian and Tai Butian suddenly felt infinite regret in their hearts. Just now, they were still vaguely jealous, feeling that Chu Yang didn't treat them as well as Mo Qingwu. But now, he fell in front of them just like that for them. This fall without time to think was enough to prove too much. If he only cared about Mo Qingwu, or if Mo Qingwu was the most important in his heart, then his subconscious action should be to step forward bravely, with his whole body in front of Mo Qingwu and his two arms in front of himself. The arms and the body were different. However, in the moment when he didn't have time to think, Chu Yang thought of how to protect the three of them at the same time. The only solution was to turn his body horizontally and use his body to block the fatal injuries of the three women. At that moment, there was no hesitation at all. The two women felt despair and regret at the same time. A kind of heart-shattering guilt rose spontaneously. I shouldn't have doubted you. I shouldn't have been jealous. The three women looked at the satisfied smile on Chu Yang's face and suddenly felt that there was nothing left to live for. Seeing Chu Yang's breathing gradually weaken, the three women only felt that their souls were also gradually leaving their bodies. If you are here, I will accompany you to the ends of the world. If you don't leave me, I will follow you in life and death. If you go, I will accompany you to the netherworld. If you are a lonely soul, I will follow you. If your soul is scattered, I will be destroyed. Mo Qingwu slowly drew out the Qingwu dream saber and looked at Chu Yang affectionately. There was endless infatuation in the depths of her eyes. Chu Yang, the moment you take your last breath, I will cut my own throat with my saber. I will walk with you to the fountain, so that we won't be separated and have to search for each other. Wu Qianqian and Tai Butian also made the same choice at the same time. Chu Yang is dead, there is no point in me living anymore. Since this is the case, why don't we go together? We are not fated in this life. I pray that we can be husband and wife again in the next life, together for a lifetime. After a long, long time, eh? Mo Qingwu's eyes were still sparkling with tears, but she exclaimed in great surprise, why, is it like this? Wu Qianqian and Tai Butian turned to look at her at the same time. At the same time, they also exclaimed in surprise, eh? Because, the three women discovered at the same time that the three swords were stabbed in at the same time and were stabbed very deeply. Not even the slightest trace of blood seeped out from the wound. Although Chu Yang's breath was gradually weakening, why wasn't he vomiting blood? After suffering such a serious injury, shouldn't it be reasonable for him to vomit a few dozen tails of blood? And this didn't seem to be the most bizarre thing. The most bizarre thing was, Chu Yang's body fell to the ground, and the three swords were all stabbed into his body. Only the sword hilts were left at the wound, but on the other side of his body, there was no sword tip piercing through. What's going on? What's going on? Chu Yang, who was lying on the ground and waiting for death, only felt that his body didn't hurt anymore. For a moment, he was a little surprised. He blinked and said, what's going on? Why am I not dead yet? Why doesn't it hurt anymore? Is it because it's too painful and numb, or is it the final radiance of the setting sun? I'm also afraid of death. Don't play with me anymore, give me a quick death. You. The more Chu Yang spoke, the angrier he became. He didn't show any signs of injury. The three women couldn't help but feel angry. Mo Qingwu cautiously tried to touch the sword hilts on Chu Yang's forehead with her hand. Puff. With a soft sound, the sword hilt, which was in a crucial position, turned into air and disappeared without a trace. Chu Yang's forehead was unscathed. It didn't even seem to have a red mark. Wah wah wah. Mo Qingwu cried out excitedly with tears in her eyes. She cried while crying. Wu Qianqian and Tai Butian were also like this. They didn't have any grace or bearing to speak of. Only now did they feel their hearts beating wildly. They were as nervous as a drum. Wu Qianqian and Tai Butian reached for the other two sword hilts almost at the same time. As expected, the other two sword hilts also turned into air with two puff sounds. They also dissipated between heaven and earth. The three women felt as if a huge rock had been lifted from their hearts. They didn't try to avoid anything. They anxiously tore apart Chu Yang's clothes. Sure enough, there was a smooth skin on the sword wound. There wasn't even a trace of blood. The three women covered their mouths at the same time, and started to cry. Fear, ecstasy, happiness, excitement, All kinds of emotions welled up in their hearts at this moment. Of course, happiness and excitement had gained the upper hand this time. They had almost collapsed in grief a moment ago. But now, they were ecstatic to the point of collapse. They spoke incoherently, and danced with joy. You didn't die. Boo-hoo. That's great. You didn't die. Thank God. The three women were sobbing. They were ecstatic as tears flowed down their cheeks. Chu Yang blinked. He pretended to be strained, and said, "What? What's wrong?" The three women threw themselves on his body, and wailed, "You scared me to death just now." Chu Yang opened his eyes. He was at a loss. He didn't feel any pain in his body at this time. He said in bewilderment, "What's going on?" Suddenly, a burst of laughter came from the sky. It was a wretched laugh full of schadenfreude, a mischievous prank, and a very smug satisfaction. Ha 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 ha. You've finally been fooled. Ha 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 ha. The laughter was so pleased with itself that it seemed to be filled with the taste of a beating. Humph humph, how can the trap I set be so easy to escape from? Ha 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 ha. I love to see other people's stunned expressions. Ha 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 ha. The image of a young man in white gradually appeared in the air. He held his stomach and laughed uncontrollably. I love pranks the most. Ha 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 ha. Every time a prank succeeds, it makes me feel good all over. I can laugh for a long time. Ha ha ha. Chapter 2498. This young man in white was very handsome and belonged to the type that was pleasing to the eye no matter how one looked at him. But apart from that, he was also the type that felt evil no matter how one looked at him. In any case, it was a kind of indescribable evil. It was evil, a very pure evil. It was definitely not the kind of evil that was lustful or unorthodox. Instead, it was a kind of evil that was full of stubbornness. If you don't want me to do something, I will do it. Chu Yang looked at this guy who suddenly appeared in a daze. How is it? Does it feel good? Does it feel good? The young man in white continued to laugh, rubbing his belly with his hand. Wahahaha. Silly. You have been fooled. You and your wife have been fooled by me. Roar, Mo Qingwu and the other two glared at this guy at the same time. Their gazes were as sharp as swords, piercing the young man in white in the sky until he was full of holes. If their gazes really had killing power. This bastard, he almost scared people to death and yet he was still so excited. He really deserved a beating. Who are you? Mo Qingwu was really angry. She shouted on the spot, "Come down if you have the guts." I'm not going down. I'm not going down. The young man in white smiled. If you have the guts, ask your husband to come and beat me. Chu Yang had already stood up with Tai Butian's help. He carefully checked his body. There was indeed no injury at all. After being stunned for a long time, he finally flew into a rage. Bastard. Is this very fun? The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. He was so angry that his hair stood on end. The young man in white smiled. I'm just teasing you. What can you do? Bite me. His body slowly turned into nothingness. He laughed and said, I'll wait for you in front of your path. If you have the guts, come and fight with me. Ha ha ha. Otherwise, I'll tease you again and again. It's really too fun. I haven't had so much fun in so long. Ha ha ha. His voice was still echoing. But the figure of the young man in white had completely disappeared. Bastard. 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 Mo Qingwu waved her fists. She was so angry that she couldn't even speak. But that person had already disappeared without a trace. Even if she wanted to vent her anger, she had nowhere to vent it. She shook Chu Yang's arm and said, Chu Yang, promise me, you must find this guy. Give him a good beating. Help us vent our anger. That's right, I was scared to death just now. I'm so pissed off. Even Tai Butian, who had always been well-mannered, had an angry look on her face. Chu Yang snorted and said in an unyielding manner, Don't worry. I'll beat him up so badly that even his wife won't recognize him. His heart was beating like a drum. This guy. I know him. This guy was the one who created Calamity Sword. or the one who created calamity space. He was most likely the pinnacle master of the universe. Let me hit him, this idea can be. But, the real problem is, when would he be able to defeat him? It was a good idea to torture others. But when would he have the ability to oppress others? This was a question worth pondering. But no matter what, he had to hit him, especially that hateful smiling face of his. If he didn't slap it until it was purple and red, and the petals were scattered everywhere, and the golden light was dazzling, he wouldn't stop. Not only did he let his wives down, but he also let himself down. After experiencing this sudden life and death experience without any warning, it was a completely real life and death experience. After experiencing death and being reborn, he was able to feel the pain of death. Chu Yang suddenly felt that the invisible barrier that was originally at the peak of the saint level. Now, it had become mottled and broken. It was like a piece of bulletproof glass that had been hit hard by a sledgehammer. Although it was still barely formed and maintained its original shape, and hadn't been completely shattered into pieces, the cracks on it were already like a spiderweb. He only needed to exert the right amount of force, and he could easily break through. Chu Yang took a deep breath and finally decided not to break through here. It wouldn't be too late to break through after he got out. It was just that, was it really just because he had experienced life and death that he had gained such a huge improvement in such an inexplicable manner? Chu Yang asked himself in his heart. Then, he got a very definite answer. No, at least not completely. Chu Yang could feel that the 3 stages that Mo Qingwu and the other 2 had broken through were the ones that were truly significant to him, even crucial. In a very, 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 very distant space-time. The young man in white snapped his fingers. The enmity has been successfully implanted. The degree is indelible. Old Black, I'm afraid it'll be a little difficult for you to snatch opponents from me in the future. I believe you won't copy my tricks with low-level pirated copies. Wahahaha. After this very discordant little episode, the intimacy between the 4 of them had obviously increased again, and it was a huge increase in all aspects. Especially between Mo Qingwu, Wu Qianqian, and Tai Butian. Everyone could even disregard their lives for the same man. And this man could even disregard his life for the 3 of them. If they were to compete with each other out of jealousy, then it would really be meaningless. A wide shining road appeared in front of them. The 3 of them walked up side by side. This road was filled with a quiet and auspicious atmosphere. Walking up, one could feel peace and tranquility in one's heart. When they walked on this road, the 3 of them had a feeling at the same time. This road seemed to lead to happiness. A palace suddenly appeared in front of them. Illusory and ethereal. 3 words were inlaid at the entrance of the palace, but also seemed to be suspended in mid-air. Hall of Hearts. Chu Yang and the 3 of them found themselves standing at the entrance of a palace for no reason. The door of the palace was wide open, and there seemed to be no one inside. It was just a spacious hall. Chu Yang walked in very calmly. When he walked in, he could feel that Mo Qingwu, Zi Xiecheng, Tai Butian, Wu Qianqian, Jiyu Duxing, and the other brothers were beside him. Everyone accompanied him, talking and laughing as they walked in together. Chu Yang's heart was filled with joy, serenity, and peace, without any negative emotions. He walked in contentedly and blissfully. There was only one thought in his heart, and it was infinitely fulfilling. He didn't think that this was also a test. This was just an ordinary spacious hall, with nothing inside. It was just a path that one had to pass through. Chu Yang, Tai Butian, Mo Qingwu, and Wu Qianqian actually didn't realize that although the 4 of them had entered the Hall of Hearts at the same time, and were originally very close to each other, but the moment they entered, they actually all separated. They separated very naturally, and each of them went their own way, each of them going their own way. They didn't help each other, nor did they overlap. But everyone could feel that they were beside each other. As Mo Qingwu walked forward, she could clearly feel that she had Chu Yang, Tai Butian, Wu Qianqian, Zi Xiecheng, Mo Tianji. All the people close to her were all there, complete and perfect. She also walked forward slowly and happily. Since she had already let go of that obsession, then she should enjoy her own happy life to the fullest. There were still so many people she loved and cared about, accompanying her. What else was there to be dissatisfied with? Tai Butian and Wu Chanxian also walked over, and they were similarly comfortable and happy. All the knots in their hearts had already been untied. Everything that could possibly lead to conflict was no longer a problem. At this point in life, there was only a bright and smooth path forward, without any obstacles. Other than accompanying Chu Yang all the way forward, there was nothing else in their hearts, and what they didn't know was that at the moment they walked out of this hall of hearts, at the moment when their bodies were surrounded by a relaxed and joyful atmosphere, Zi Xiecheng, who was far away in the heavenly imperial court, suddenly let out a long and inexplicable sigh of relief. It was as if something that was difficult to solve had suddenly been solved, or could no longer be a problem. The relaxation and joy in her heart at this moment made Zi Xiecheng very surprised. For a moment, she completely didn't know what had happened. When the four of them walked out of the palace, they still walked out side by side. None of them realized that they were actually separated in this palace. No one realized this, and they just walked out side by side as if it was very normal. There was nothing unusual. In fact, Mo Qingwu even felt a little strange. What's going on with this strange palace? Why is it so normal to walk over, and there's no scenery at all? It's too. In the end, she actually couldn't think of a very suitable adjective for a moment, and could only attribute it to that. Wu Chanxian and Tai Butian were also very confused at this moment. These two women's thoughts were extremely meticulous, almost no less than Chu Yang's. They didn't believe that after the previous 3 extremely difficult tests, there would actually be such a completely normal empty palace. In fact, before they entered the palace, they had already taken many precautions to guard against the appearance of variables. However, after they entered the palace, there was not the slightest bit of abnormality. Moreover, they quickly entered a state of extreme ease, extreme peace, extreme joy, and extreme bliss. Only after they safely passed through the palace did the two women wake up once again. While they were filled with joy, they were not without some lingering fear. During that period of blank time just now, if any unforeseen event occurred, they would probably only be able to wait for death. How could Chu Yang not understand the danger? His heart stirred, and he carefully checked his cultivation and divine sense cultivation to see if anything strange had happened. Who knew that with one look, he was actually shocked. It wasn't to say that he had really been plotted against, and his cultivation and divine sense had been damaged. The situation was the exact opposite. His cultivation had actually soared by a large margin from what he had just checked, and his own divine sense had also abruptly improved by a large margin, and his original somewhat regretful nature, and even the faint guilt towards Mo Qingwu, and the faint guilt towards Tai Butian and Wu Chanxian that was hidden in the bottom of his heart had all disappeared without a trace. Chapter 2499. The man in white said lightly, "I'm just an idle person who is far away from the troubles of the world. What's there to be envious of? I'm afraid you don't mean what you say." After saying this, he finally looked back. Chu Yang narrowed his eyes slightly. This person's eyes were very sharp. At a glance, it was like 2 long swords piercing through the air. When he looked at him, Chu Yang felt that he was still a person standing in the clouds, wielding his sword. That kind of elegance and confidence could no longer be described with words. Although the white-robed man didn't do anything else, just a glance was enough for Lin Yun to know what was going on. This person's wind god aura and every move of his seemed to have reached a marvelous level that was completely natural. It was truly admirable. Chu Yang's expression was unchanged, but his heart was full of praise. Such a person was definitely not a nobody. Who was this person? Chu Yang did not know that at this moment, in the eyes of the other party, he was also calm and composed. It was as if he was facing a vast ocean, unfathomable. It was also as if he was facing a towering mountain, majestic and dignified. Naturally, there was also a majestic atmosphere. This person's eyes finally showed some surprise. He said, "May I ask where you are from?" Chu Yang's heart moved. He said, "I'm from the heavenly level continent." Hearing the two words heavenly level continent, the eyes of the man in white quickly shrank. Then he smiled gently and said, "Little brother, the heavenly level continent. I'm afraid it can't give birth to someone like you." When he said this, the fishing rod in his hand suddenly shook. He grabbed it casually. As soon as he lifted it, the fishing line made whooshing sounds. Obviously, another big fish had taken the bait. His face immediately showed a kind of heartfelt joy. He concentrated on stretching the fishing rod and fishing line, fighting a battle of wits and strength with the fish in the lake. The fishing rod moved with the movement of the rod. Sometimes it advanced and sometimes it retreated. It was a cycle, with his cultivation, even if he did not use the fishing rod and fishing line. With just a casual move, even if there was a 10,000 catty fish in the lake, he would still be able to catch it. But he abandoned his cultivation and only used the strength and skills of an ordinary person. He competed with the fish in the lake. He did not know why. When Chu Yang saw him grab the fishing rod with his hand, he saw his elegant demeanor as if he was still sitting high up in the clouds. That imposing manner of looking down on the world with his sword, his heart inexplicably thought of two sentences. Stepping on the firmament, pointing my sword at by Yun Dong, the fishing line whooshed and the fishing rod was bent into a bow. It seemed like it was going to bend even further. The direction of the white-robed man's fishing rod was following the struggling of the fish below. Moving from east to west, it was clear that there was still some suspense in this battle of life and death. Chu Yang slowly walked up the tree stump. He praised, "What a fat fish. Look at it, it must weigh at least 8.5 pounds. The man in white laughed out loud. His hands didn't stop moving, releasing and retracting from time to time, further exhausting the endurance of the hook. He smiled and said, "It's more or less the same. Don't look down on this 8 catty fish. It's very strong. If an ordinary person were to enter the water, he would probably be killed by this 8.5 catty fish." Chu Yang smacked his lips and said, "Are you serious? Is it really that powerful? That's the home ground of the fish. How powerful the fish in the water is not something you and I can predict." The man in white smiled. Chu Yang had eaten a lot of fish droplets, but he really never thought that fish could be that powerful. In his eyes, fish was just a kind of food. How could it suddenly turn into a murderer that could kill people in reverse? Chu Yang didn't believe in heresy. He permeated his spiritual power into the water, and followed the movements of the fish as it floated up and down. The final result made Chu Yang surprised. He said, "This fish can exert more than 50 kilograms of strength in the water. And, this strength isn't even at its limit. According to this calculation, if an ordinary person with no cultivation and a weak physique fell into the lake, he would definitely be killed by this fish. Because the strength that a person exerted in the water was definitely much weaker than normal. In summary, this 8.5 catty fish really had the ability to kill people. This was a fact, not a joke. Scientific proof shows that the strength that a fish exerts in the water is more than 10 times the weight of the fish itself. This fish is also quite pitiful. It was not easy for it to grow so big, but in the end, it will inevitably be eaten." Mo Ching-Wu sighed softly as she looked at the golden carp still struggling in the water. "Of course it is pitiful." The man in white looked at the water and said lightly, "But, natural selection, survival of the fittest, the law of the jungle, this is the truth. Since this fish took the bait today, then it is our harvest. There is no reason to let it go. Sometimes compassion is necessary, but sometimes compassion is not necessary and can be ignored." The man in white said, "Because we still have to live. Although anything can fill the stomach, the nutrients that fish can provide to the human body are far more than other foods. And most importantly, the fish is very delicious." He smiled lightly, "My guests have come from afar. Today, I will treat you to fish." Chu Yang smiled and said, "Are you going to personally cook?" The man in white laughed and said, "Chef Junyuan, I have a wife." This sentence made Mo Ching-Wu, Tai Butian, and the others all pursed their lips and smiled. A very strange feeling suddenly arose in his heart. It was clearly the first time that they had met each other, And they had never seen each other before. They had not even introduced themselves, but when they spoke so warmly, they actually did not regard each other as outsiders at all. Moreover, they did not talk about anything of value. They were just chatting and did not say anything meaningful. In just a few words, they had already confirmed the matter of treating them to a meal. And at this time, even the guests did not know who the host was, and the host did not know who the guests were. The origins, backgrounds, positions, motives, and so on of both parties were completely unknown. This was really, extremely strange. But all this happened naturally, logically, and appropriately, without the slightest bit of awkwardness. Chu Yang had always been very vigilant. But when faced with this person, he found that he could not raise his vigilance at all. Just as the two of them were talking, the water surface kept splashing. That fish seemed to have finally exhausted all its strength and started to float on the water surface. The man in white did not bat an eyelid. He controlled the fishing rod and the fishing line unhurriedly, gradually retracting it. But he did not lift the fishing rod out of the water in one breath. Obviously, he was guarding against the hidden final counterattack of that big fish. Sure enough, he saw that the carp was no longer struggling. It quickly turned over and dived back into the water as if it had been helped by God. Then, it started to struggle again. According to Chu Yang's divine sense, this time's struggle was perhaps even more intense than the previous one. However, it couldn't escape the control of the fishing line no matter what. It was circling around the fishing line. In the end, that fish finally exhausted all its strength. It was so tired that it turned over and floated on the water surface, lifeless. The man in white laughed, but he still carefully retracted the fishing line bit by bit. It was not until the big fish was loosened into the fish basket that his expression relaxed, as if he had completed a grand task. Chu Yang and the other three watched this scene with great interest. They all felt that it was a feast for their eyes. It was a worthwhile trip. Chu Yang was delighted to see the prey. He felt his hands itch. He stepped forward and said, "Let me try." The man in white laughed and did not say much. He stepped aside. Chu Yang sat on the stump and carefully hung the fish food. He shook the fishing rod and the bait followed the fishing line in a beautiful arc. It quietly fell into the water and the waves were slightly stirred. The man in white reminded him, "Well done. But you must retract your divine sense. Don't use it to probe." Using divine sense as a supplement will increase the chance of success, but it will lose the joy of unexpected surprises. It will also lose the freedom. Don't use your own cultivation. Complete the process of fishing with your physical strength. If there is a time when you really can't handle it, you can only use your cultivation to strengthen the fishing rod and line. Let me tell you, the best time of fishing is when the fish has just taken the bait. The fishing line whooshes and you suddenly feel a heavy weight in your hand. You feel the pull from below. The joy at that time is really incomparable. The man in white said with great enjoyment. Chu Yang listened carefully and felt. His eyes were fixed on the fishing float on the water surface. He suddenly realized that the fishing float had sunk. He immediately lifted the fishing rod, but it was empty. Ha ha ha. Mo Qingwu and the others laughed. Too rushed again, too slow again, too slow again. The same thing happened again and again. The man in white seemed to be unable to bear it anymore. He went forward to snatch the fishing rod and complained, "Brother, how are you fishing? You're purely here to feed the fish. I'm worried that if this goes on, you'll feed all the fish in this lake until they're full. When they're all full, how can any fish be willing to take the bait? Let me do it." Chu Yang handed back the fishing rod, embarrassed. He said awkwardly, "The fish in this lake must have been caught by you too many times. They've all learned. I'm just a beginner. Just passable. The man in white rolled his eyes. If you don't have the skills, don't blame the fish for being smart. Originally, when I saw your action of running the hook into the water, I thought you were a veteran. Turns out you're just like that. No matter how smart the fish are, they're definitely not as smart as humans. Other things aside, they don't even have the slightest bit of cultivation." Chu Yang grimaced. "Are you saying that I'm not even as smart as a fish?" You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.